What day is this?
It's Mail It In Friday.
Yeah, well, the dude abides.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Well, it is Mail It In Friday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star with you. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Coming up guest-wise, we will have Chris Colabello, former Blue Jay, at 4:30. At 5:05, Craig Button will stop by talking hockey. 6:05, Mike Ferrin from MLB Network will stop by. And then Ryan Dinwiddie, the Argos coach, at 6:30. So, Dave, here we are. We've completed a week. Plenty of stuff going on. A lot of stuff percolating in the NBA. Before we get going, we have, and you need some sort of a code cipher to figure out the playoff cap in the NHL that'll click in when the new deal clicks in a year's time. It is, I don't know, it's there. It's, you know, it's all there, Dave.
It's there.
It's all there. What does it mean? Can you see that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
No idea.
Good question. No, look, you know, the bottom line is there is going to be a form of a playoff salary cap that's going to attempt to close the loophole, at least partially close the loophole of having a guy on LTIR for the bulk of the season or the whole season, in the case of maybe a Kucherov of old, and then put him in play for the playoffs and doesn't count against your cap because there is no cap in the playoffs. In previous eras. Now, this doesn't kick in until 26, 27, right? So,
yeah.
So this coming playoffs is just, same old, same old. And I think it tells you something, Jim, that part of this agreement is if they don't like the way it's working, they can reopen the agreement and tweak it a couple of years in, even though this CBA is for a handful of years more. So,
well, that's good. That's good news.
Well, you know what it tells you, though, is that they're not quite sure, right?
Yeah.
If there are unintended consequences from this agreement, because as you know and I know, the one thing that capologists always figure out is another loophole.
That's right. Find the loophole.
When one loophole
Where's
closes,
Waldo? Find the loophole.
When one loophole closes, another one opens. And now it's really quite technical, and I don't even know if it's worth discussing on air. But the bottom line is, like, you'll still be able to carry guys on LTIR, but there's going to be kind of two classes of LTIR players by my reading of it. There's going to be a class of LTIR player that basically is deemed by the NHL and the NHLPA to have no chance of playing in the playoffs, in which case that's not going to be an issue. You can have him on LTIR. But if you've got a player that is, perhaps in play for the playoffs, in that case, by my reading of this document, you can only carry an extra number on the cap on the LTIR side of it that is equal to the average salary from the year before, which this year was $3.5 million. So they're trying to limit the amount of LTIR that's on the cap for guys who essentially are viable players in the current season or the current playoff season. Whether it'll work or not, whether the capologists will come up with a way to get around it, and we'll have what seems like the status quo, who knows? But the other thing is, Jim, which is going to be incredibly complicated, it seems to me, is that the salary cap in the playoffs is only going to apply to 20 players.
Right. Well, that's how many you can dress.
Right. As opposed to the current 23-man roster.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's going to work either. It seems seems like a headache.
Probably more than one loophole.
I'll tell you who's going to make money off this. The capologists.
Yeah.
Because they're going to need
Look
more
what
of
I've
them.
done. Yeah. or somebody will figure out the loophole, and then the next year everybody will copy it.
Yeah. But there's going to be a lot of cap oversight built into this, I think. Like a lot more cap oversight. Like you're going to need to have guys keeping an eye on if you're compliant, game to game, minute to minute in the playoffs.
Compliance officer.
I don't love it.
Yeah.
I don't love it. I
might explore that.
There's already enough math in sports. This seems like they're adding a lot more math to sports, Jim.
Yeah.
I don't like this.
No. And so in the late hours of the night, Ryan Reaves was moved to San Jose for Henry Thrun, blue liner. And so the Leafs save a couple $100,000 on that. And I'm told Thrun can be removed from the roster with no penalty, whereas Reaves would have carried some sort of like a $200,000 hit.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is the penalty for Ryan Reaves talking up the merits of living in Vegas to Mitch Marner.
Well, there's a couple guys on that list.
Yeah, Max. We infer from this that Max Pacioretty won't be back with the Leafs too.
And Yarncroc is on his way out.
After he was essentially an employee of the Nevada Tourist Board when it came to Mitch Marner's. Apparently now that we understand quite long consideration of life in Vegas, where he basically surveyed everybody who's ever played there, including current Leaf teammates or last year's Leafs teammates. I guess that's it for Ryan Reaves. Maybe the dream of 1,000 games for Ryan Reaves is now alive, because we talked about it the other day, right? He's 88 short or whatever it is.
Yeah, we put the kibosh on it, but so his deal expires this year. But I'm sure if there's a contribution with the Sharks, they could figure out a way how to extend that.
Well, who knows? I mean, hey, as I said at the time, no one expected this guy to play one NHL game. He's played 900 plus.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell him short.
No, absolutely not. So he was at an event at Vegas, and I believe that trade broke around 10 o'clock our time, which would be 8 there, a very early evening. And he's at an event in Vegas, and here's how he let it slip.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you see a line like this of fans waiting to greet them?
It's good to see that they still love me. I'm not going to lie. You guys are actually going to get the first scoops here. They may start hating me pretty soon because I just got traded to the Sharks. So we'll see how that goes over with the fans.
There he was on KTNV television, breaking the news and Fox Sports.
I'll tell you what, that's an impressive lineup of people.
It was.
In midsummer, going to get an autograph of a guy who doesn't even play for your hometown team anymore.
And considering all the other options, all the other entertainment options in that city.
Exactly. Like there is quite a bit to do in Vegas.
What do you want to do? A casino show? No, let's go down and see Ryan Reaves. He's probably going to announce his trade.
Let's go get Ryan Reaves' autograph on some memorabilia down at the convention center. I don't know, man. I give that town is interesting, man. Every time I've been there for hockey, It surprises me the amount of Golden Knights merchandise you see walking up and down the strip, the amount of Golden Knights paraphernalia you see, and every restaurant's got it behind the bar, every casino's got it somewhere, some kind of acknowledgement that the Golden Knights are important to that town. And I think there's something to be said for being the first big team there, right? They're baseball's going to move there. There's rumors basketball's going to get there. Obviously football's there, but hockey was first. The NHL was first, and
you remember the game they played in the parking lot, the Kings and whoever, with the grasshoppers all over the place?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's there's been some crazy moments in hockey history in the Nevada desert. But hey, man, Ryan Reaves is apparently you can make a check showing up for an appearance in the desert when you don't even play for the team.
Yeah,
how about that?
And announce your trade to San Jose. We're going to play a mini Jerry's. My apologies. I don't like to infringe on anybody else's material, but it is OverDrive, and producer Cam said, got to play mini Jerry's. And I said, so, okay, if you're saying we do, there is a yes guy, no guy in here as well, and that's later on. But I'm going to throw a new game at you. It's called Mini Max.
Okay.
And so this is trade deadline. We'll start with the Jays and maybe through the course of the 3 hours get to the Leafs or Raptors. But let's, and subjective, your list. What's the minimum you could take out of the Jays doing at the deadline? What's the max? What's your dream?
You want me to start with the min?
Yeah.
I'd say the min in my mini max would be got to be a starter, right? Like they need another arm here. You can't pretend, or you can't really hope that Max Scherzer just continues to keep it together at age 40 with the condition he's been in this season, right? With the thumb, and everybody knows that he's had a hard time finishing seasons in the latter part of his career. So as much as you'd love Max Scherzer to be there for you when it matters,
be nice, but
it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think his intensity and his experience and his ferocity would be wonderful to have, and contagious even in that dugout. But and then you think about, you've essentially had 3 tent-pole starters all year, right? You've had Barrios, Bassett, and Gossman. Those are the 3 guys you can rely on. So you gotta add a big-time arm to me. This has got to be a guy that you can count on to extend this rotation and give you more options. Because you'd also love to see Alek Manoah back, and there's plans for that, but you can't plan on it.
Yeah, that just doesn't have durability written all over it, does it? I mean, regardless of what you get out of him, you'd consider it a bonus, and you sure wouldn't want to have to depend on it just because. It could ruin his career.
Well, that's just it.
Yeah.
That's just it. He's coming back off serious stuff, and you got to let that go at its own pace and can't be forced. It'd be nice if, hey, he's been pitching these simulated games, and it would be nice if he could find his way into a real game, come August, which is possible. But, to count on him in the biggest moments in September and hopefully October, I'm not sure you can go there. So that's my mini is just, my minimum would be
one arm.
Get an arm that can start and go from there.
So I should have prefaced this. After the All-Star break, the Jays will have 66 games. 14 games will be played going into the trade deadline. So that leaves them after the trade deadline, assuming they do something on July 31st. Maybe they do it before. 52 games in 59 nights. And the other premise is you could look at it and say, well, they'll have clinched the division. I'm not counting on that. I mean, to me, that goes right to the end. So you may get extended on the last week or so of having to overplay, or you might use up a few arms, and you need the durability. So I would agree with you. The minimum for me is actually 2 arms, a starter and a bullpen pitcher. I was watching Steve Phillips on SportsCenter the other night, and he was talking about bringing in a reliever so you could move Hoffman a little deeper in terms of what he has to do, and just set him up better. And because of there's going to be a lot of wear and tear here. I would agree with that. I stayed away from adding a bat because I looked at it when Santander, Varsho, Vladdy, Jimenez. If Vladdy gets to where he should be, and if those other 3 guys are healthy and can contribute at a level they should, maybe you don't need a bat. Yeah.
That would be a big maybe, though, right?
Well, all of this is predicated with how big the lettering is on maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm going to my max, I'm going to want a bat because, Anthony Santander, there's a reason you brought him in because he was a 44 home run guy a year ago, but he's giving you next to nothing this year, given the injury struggles, and you just have no idea what you're going to get if and when he gets over the injury struggles, right?
Because he wasn't established as a Blue Jay before.
And part of that was he clearly wasn't looking healthy, especially, before they sat him down. Before they sat him down, we were wondering why he was in the lineup because he just didn't look like himself. And it was clearly an injury-related issue. So that's, that one's a tricky one too. But, I mean, you're not going to be able to have everything, but you do have to feel like there's a desperation here from this front office, right? Like, you hope there's a desperation from this front office because they're
they should be.
Yeah, they're 9 years in here in the Shapiro-Atkins era and don't have a playoff win to their name. And, how much longer can you go?
Well, look, we've already seen 2 press conferences where presidents from the Leafs and Raptors were fired or not renewed, however you want to say that. And so if you're the surviving tandem, you want it to be you next, because...
Take the hint.
Well, if there's disappointment here, I mean, I would define disappointment. That would be missing the playoffs.
Well, and you might even say that you got to read the room when it comes to this trade deadline. Like, you wonder, that ownership is very attuned to what's going on in this town right now, because this is a big moment in Toronto sports history, right? Where Rogers Communications, which owned the Blue Jays, has owned the Blue Jays for a long time now, and has been the sole proprietor essentially of the Blue Jays for a long time. Now, essentially controls everything. Controls the Leafs, controls the Raptors, controls every piece of sporting infrastructure in this town, essentially, outside of Larry Tannenbaum's WNBA venture, right?
Yeah.
And the and a few other pieces, but I think there's a sensitivity there. Like, they just lost the popularity contest with Masai Ujiri. In watching him walk out the door, there was quite a bit of backlash from that Keith Pelly press conference. Because I'm not sure that Pelly, who hadn't been, in his defense, hasn't been in town for the last decade, flew in from England, has only been here about a year, even though he's from here. I'm not sure he really read that situation perfectly in terms of the way they let Masai go. Doing it the day after the draft didn't look good. When you had draft picks coming in for a press conference, there was a lot to roll your eyes about with that move. So that one didn't sit well.
No, it was excuse me, clumsy.
Very clumsy.
Yeah.
Obviously the Shanna plan went kaput, and we all know how that went. That's understandable that Brendan Shanahan's not back, but again, there's a sour taste around the Maple Leafs.
Okay, so just let me cut in for a second. Is the Shanna plan any different from Shapiro? It's almost the same length of time.
It's on a similar timeline. Yeah. I mean, Shanahan got here a couple years before, but it's a similar timeline. And, you could argue that, you can argue that there's been more, more squandered, in Shapiro's era here, because it's not like they haven't won a playoff game. Like it's not like they haven't really even gotten going. Like at least the Leafs had a couple of series to their credit under Shanahan, and we all know. Look, they came close to getting to an Eastern Final, and if they get to that Eastern Final this year, Jim, not that I don't think any of us think they're a comparable team to the Florida Panthers, but they had a really good chance to upset the Florida Panthers. If they would have done that, I think Shanahan would still be hanging around here. I'm not sure what kind of extension he would have gotten, but I think he would have still been the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, but that would have been with a really nice playoff run in his back pocket.
Yeah,
but Shapiro's got nothing of that sort on his resume.
I mean, you could literally apply the logic for both outgoing presidents to the Blue Jay boss.
Exactly,
it'd be no different,
and it would be a very simple explanation for whoever makes the announcement. It's, hey, we feel like we've left potential on the table here, and we feel this organization needs a new set of eyes, understanding how to take it to the next level.
Literally use the same script.
Very simple.
Yeah.
These guys. So all I'm saying is I think you want to know who's got a lot of pressure on them right now. It's those two guys. It's those two executives. Because I think, like, if ownership's always watching, Jim, ownership's always looking over your shoulder, no matter what you're doing in the sports world. There's some owners that are more involved than others. They're always watching. But I would say the ownership right now is watching with a keener eye than ever, because they're sensitive to this moment in history, because they're taking over the whole landscape and they want to make a statement that they actually know what the hell they're doing.
I was always, 6 years since the Raptors won. Because of the ownership of the Raptors and the Leafs, and everybody understands what comes out of going and winning the championship. The template is there. It's in-house. Everybody understands where that goes, why there wasn't more pressure put on for the Leafs to follow or for the Jays to follow, because you know what's there. You know what happens. Team wins, big parade, and you see the ramifications of it for the next 2 years. You almost have 2 years of grace. I mean, the Raptors still are riding somewhat on the grace of that championship.
Well, tell that to Masai Ujiri.
Well, but they are.
I mean, another job.
I think, but that's when things were bad, people would go, "Well, the guy in charge is the guy who built the championship, so he's going to figure it out." There's a grace period. You're
right. That's why Masai Ujiri is still a very marketable basketball executive.
Yeah,
because he's got that thing in his back pocket, right? He's got a ring around his finger. He's got an incredible trade history on his resume, and the last few years haven't gone as well. But he's also got a team here that has a lot of pieces and could be turned into something, especially in a wide open East. If things break their way, they could be a feel good story in very short order here. So it could also be a disappointment. I don't deny that that's a possibility as well. But you're right, man. It's there for them, but I think this is, if you're reading the room correctly, as Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, I think you understand that there's a real need here. There's a real need from the people above you for you to have success in this moment.
I think a lot of people, first of all, they said 2025 was the year. Most of the people we've had on in the week that you and I have done this show have agreed that this is the year. You push the chips into the middle of the table, you go for it, because things start to change next year.
Yeah, exactly. Things start to change next year.
That's reading the room.
And look, next year could be like last year, where you never really got off the ground. You never really found it, right? It was kind of a disappointment from start to finish.
Yeah.
And you never really had anything going. And so, you had injuries, you had, just a certain malaise. You had the GM talking about guys being in their own heads at the plate with runners in scoring position. You had, nothing went your way. And so you just can't be sure when you're going to have your moment. You're right. And look now, don't look now, but the Yankees have a big storybook win last night. The Red Sox have been hot lately. It's not like it's going to be easy.
No, well, nobody says that. I think it goes down to the final game or two. And I guess the ultimate question is, the surprise element of the Jays. How does that track? Does it continue surprising, or does it sort of reach the level that, or a recessive level whereby it sort of evens out?
Yeah.
I don't have the projections on that, but somebody does.
I don't want to go all Michael K on you, but the run differential is still not great. And look, I mean, whatever that means, it means something, right? It means that they've been up and down. Like, you look at their run differential since May 28th, it's really high. you look at their run differential previous to that, it was negative, right? So, or not very positive. So, we know this team can get hot. We also know it can be very, very cold, frighteningly, chillingly cold.
Yeah, well,
So,
we've been there. So if you had to do a max, what would you, if you could, I guess, empty the till, get whatever you needed to guarantee success, not only winning the division, but going deep in the playoffs, if not all the way? What are the pieces for you?
yeah, I think it would be much of what we discussed here. That you'd start with the 10-pole starter that you can count on to round out the rotation. You'd move on to a reliever. To your point, that the Steve Phillips' argument that you put Hoffman in a better spot with another power arm back there that would make his life a little easier and maximize his effectiveness. And then you would go power bat, assuming that you just do not believe that Santander is going to be back and healthy and effective, and also assuming that you're going to have some fall off from these guys who filled that void that Santander has left there.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get Bam Bam Barger being what he's been for the rest of the season, or if you do, you'd be happy with it, but you just can't expect it. You can't plan on it. You can't plan on Davis Schneider and Lucas and the rest of this crew that has stepped up really big to keep stepping up all the time. And maybe they will, and maybe there's just a magic to this team, which would be great news. And you'd take that all day, but that still means you could add talent. You can add talent to the mix, in my view, without too much risk of upsetting that magic. And then the other one that we discussed, if we're maxing out here and really going shopping with an unlimited budget, or not unlimited, but a very robust budget, would be the catching option, right?
Yeah.
Because Alejandro Kirk is essentially irreplaceable. Heineman's been fine, but the idea that you'd have a third option, a catcher, probably be a nice piece of insurance.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So 2 arms, I guess, sort of I don't want to say utility bat because it has to have some pop, and sort of a utility catcher. Let's put it that way, a multi-purpose catcher guy who could float around and has a bat. So really, you're adding a bat and a half and 2 arms.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's maxing.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was 4 players. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what are you going to need to give up for that? I mean, it's all going to depend on the various levels of quality of all those players that we just discussed. Seems like there's so many permutations and combinations that are out there, and the thing that's so hard to decipher is, who are the sellers? It's such an early trade deadline in kind of relative to the grind of the season that there's so many teams that probably aren't convinced they should sell yet. We were talking about Arizona.
Yeah, close. They're close enough that the numbers.
Zach Gallen.
The numbers get in the way.
Yeah.
All you have to do is go on a winning streak and you're in. But at the same time, if you don't, then you liquidate.
Exactly. So, hey, man, it keeps. I will say this: it's great for the city, right? Like the baseball team's relevant. That we're talking about the minutia of this roster at this moment, instead of talking about blowing it up or talking about firing the guys in the front office.
Oh, the sell-off,
which may come.
Yeah, we had a bit of a sell-off last year.
Yeah. No, it's a great moment, but to your point, you got to maximize it.
That's why they're there. Really, it's not even a question to me that you're there. You said it was 2025. Go for it.
Yeah.
Or have the press conference in a couple of months and say goodbye.
You think those are the 2 alternatives?
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Do you see it any different?
I mean, not if I were running the place, but there's been some quizzical.
Then it would be a double standard.
We had Eric Kratz on, former Blue Jay, earlier in the week, and he was wondering aloud how the hell, Shapiro and Atkins kept their jobs this long to begin with, So, and that's a former player perspective. I think a lot of us have wondered the same thing, but they're getting good crowds out there in the newly renovated ballpark, which Mark Shapiro is certainly responsible for, certainly oversaw to a large degree. So you wonder, the level of unhappiness at the ownership level with the fact that they're selling good tickets on a regular basis. They're filling the place. It's a hot place to be. It's a fun place to be. It's a refreshed place to be, and obviously it would be a much more coveted ticket if these guys can max out the trade deadline and add further electricity to the air.
Jays are in Oakland, not in Oakland, and Sacramento against the A's on the weekend. Scherzer goes tonight. Raptors against Chicago, Summer League basketball. We'll get into that. That's on TSN 4 tonight. And, of course, in the CFL, Calgary and Saskatchewan, 9 o'clock, TSN 1, 3, and 5. We'll come back with Chris Colabello talking about the Blue Jays, baseball, and a bunch of other stuff. This is OverDrive, live on YouTube, TSN 4, TSN 1050. OverDrive, mail it in Friday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk with you from the Toronto Star. Mail it in Fridays is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. BP is serving fish bowls and ice cold pints on the patio all summer long, so grab your sunscreen. Let's have ourselves a weekend. Oh, yes, guy, the Boston Pizza patio is calling you. It's calling you, Dave.
Sounds like a call I might answer.
Yeah. few pints.
I'm not going to flush that call.
No, that's right. Not going to ignore that call.
No.
Ryan Reaves, by the way, has done his media and has told everybody that he mentioned to Brad Treliving at the end of the season, no longer a fit in Toronto, given everything that transpired by being put on waivers. So he didn't like that. And we heard his goal earlier in the year, wants to play 1,000 games and full speed with that. And he's appreciative that Mr. Treliving moved him out.
Well, that's a fair assessment by Mr. Reaves, and I think a good move by Brad Treliving to find him a new place to play, acquire a potentially playable piece in return, and sort out the and improve the cap situation marginally along the way.
Yeah. So the Jays finishing off their pre-All-Star run, visiting the Oakland A's in Sacramento. Chris Colabello is here, former Blue Jay. Chris, welcome. How are you today?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. We had Joey Bats on earlier in the week, and he was comparing this year's team to the 2015 version, which you were on. Would you do that too?
Yeah, I'm going to text him and tell him, first of all, that I feel honored that I would be on the radio the same week as him. You know, obviously, Joey Bats, legend. So I'm going to send him that text when this gets done. But, yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. And it's funny, I did, one of the shows last week or before the Yankee series, and I was around the team when they were here in Boston, and I was talking to Schneid, talking to Bo, and a lot of the staff, and I think the team's very seasoned, and obviously like George has bounced back well, and having him and his presence, fit in, and then having some younger guys that are kind of like really taking on more responsibility. Yeah, I think they're a good team. I mean, you hate to make comparisons to previous teams, but because I think that puts a lot of unnecessary stress or pressure on anyone like that they don't deserve. But certainly, like, they have the makings of the opportunity of doing something special here.
Well, there's been a lot of talk, Chris, about how this run has been fueled by contributions from a lot of different guys, right? It's not like the Yankees where Aaron Judge does so much of the heavy lifting. They don't have a player of that nature. Maybe nobody in the American League does. But it's really been a collective effort, and there's a chemistry that you can sort of feel. George Springer's talked about it being like a group of brothers in that clubhouse. I mean, in your experience, how much does that stuff matter? Just the closeness of a group and the feeling that everybody's picking each other up when they need it.
It matters more than anything else, certainly more than talent. I've reflected on that 2015 team just a bunch, and obviously that's my experience, so I can speak to that. But I've been on really good teams, and like every one of them had that, right? Like whether it be in indie ball or in high school or in professional baseball, like it's so important because you just spend so much time together, and really, it takes a group recognition to understand when one person's not quite at their best or, dealing with some stuff, like it's a collective effort to kind of make up that 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever it is that they can't contribute. So, yeah, it's important. And I think, personally, just from being around them, like I spent all of BP with the guys, and, it was great to catch up with DeMarlo and Scott Weberg, the strength coach, and, all the guys that I still know. And you could tell, like, they've gone through some tribulations over the last few years. Expectations were high, and you just probably had a bunch of guys that, for one reason or another weren't ready for it. But now that they're kind of, more seasoned. And I think specifically to Vladdy and to Bo and, even George dealing with the injuries and things like that. And it's really, really important for teams to have that because it's what gets you through the tough times, right? And it's what allows you to run off streaks of 9, 10 in a row, whatever it is. And those are the big things that you need to really flip the season on its head. I'm watching it happen here in Boston. You got to have a good run to position yourself to then play 500 baseball when things aren't going well.
There's some great contributions from young ball players. In a lot of sports, if you make an early splash, it might take a year or two for the opposition to figure you out. With 162 games, that can be done in one season. So going in after we get through the All-Star break and into the stretch run, what do those kids have to not be concerned about, but maybe adjust to keep it going?
Well, the funny thing is I think if you have pretty good veteran presence that you just become a contributor, right, as a young guy. And you don't need to worry too much about your own personal stuff when you're much more concerned about the team winning, right? And I think that was a reflection of that 2015 team. Is you had guys like myself and Ryan Goins and Kevin Pillar and Devin Travis that, Osuna, Sanchez, Stroman, we didn't have a lot of time in the big leagues, even though I was, I don't know what, a decade older than all of them or whatever it was. But, when you can take that younger core group of guys and get them focused on winning, as opposed to their own personal success, then it becomes very, very easy. That's just the hard thing to do when you're young in the big leagues. And I was talking to somebody with Boston about this stuff the other day. How do you get young players to not worry about themselves, right? Because it's hard. It's hard to be in the big leagues. It's hard to get media scrutiny and attention. And, when you go 2 for 20, you're stressing out and worry about getting sent down or moved or whatever it is. And, but when you can get young guys to really focus on the team, then it changes the dynamic. So I'm not necessarily worried about the Bargers and Clements and of the world that they're in a good position, and you can see that they're having fun. Even the pop-up thing happened the other day, and I saw that, and Clement and Vladdy had their laughing moment on the field, so it was really cool. And when the older guys are promoting that, then it makes it significantly easier.
So, Chris, you're a Boston area guy. The Jays obviously trying to win the American League East for the first time since you were on the team in 2015. When you look at the Red Sox, you look at the Yankees and the Rays, I mean, who do you think poses the biggest threat to the Blue Jays in their pursuit of that division crown?
It's funny, the Rays, everybody wants to write them off every year because they keep changing personnel and you keep looking up and down the roster and you're going, I don't know how they do it. But, Tampa's here in town right now, and Tampa's doing it through really, really good starting pitching, right? They've had 5 guys as starters and they've stayed healthy on the mound. So, I want to say that there are cracks in that armor, but it's hard to say that because they keep being in contention. The Yankees are the Yankees, right? As they're known in Boston as the evil empire. So they're gonna be a threat no matter what. But ultimately, and I'm not saying this as a homer because I'm a homer to Toronto at this point. That I'm a Blue Jay through and through, but I think Boston is really coming together at the right time. The Devers trade was controversial, but I'm watching them play quite a bit, and they're going to get healthy here soon with Bregman coming back, and they just look like a team that's kind of figuring out how to win. Now, granted, they had the Nationals and the Rockies here in town, but they're still Major League Baseball games, right? And you got to win them. So it'll be really interesting. I think the East is going to be super tight and generally the best division in baseball. But if I was a betting man, I would say probably Boston and the Yankees, but too many times have I counted out the Rays and then they show up late in October and you go, how'd they get here? So it should be fun though. I mean, it'll be really competitive. So that's the good part.
So, with Boston trading Devers, trading their best player, and they still find the legs and are competitive. We have that problem with the hockey team. Best player left and trying to sort of fill in the blanks, if you will. How does that even happen, that you actually get better?
Yeah, well, it was different, right? The Devers situation, if you look at it, and we can reflect back to that chemistry thing we talked about, right? I certainly don't think Rafi is a bad kid by any stretch of the imagination. But if you look at, his personality, right? He's the analogy I'm going to use is he'd be a great Robin, right? To a Batman. Rafi is still a young kid. He doesn't embody, I think of, you guys mentioned Jose, and I'll bring up Edwin and guys like Tulo. They were just steadfast, right? They were just leaders. They were the guys that you knew you weren't going to break them, right? Every day they were going to just keep showing up and doing their job. Where Rafi is a little bit more volatile as a personality, not to mention the fact that he was the DH, right? And then they had the whole position controversy and all that stuff. So I think a lot of that had to do with the reason why they moved him. And I think they saw a path to I don't know, a more cohesive group. And I feel like that's what's happening. Only time will really tell. But yeah, that's how it happens, I think. And, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, the personality fitting in with the group at hand.
Hey, Chris, you've been around a lot of great home run hitters. That 2015 team that you were on had some incredible power hitters, and Joey Bats and Edwin and on down the line, Josh Donaldson. There's been a lot of discussion about Vladdy here in town. Obviously, you know, the Blue Jays are winning. The Blue Jays are hot. Everybody's happy. But they're also observing that Vladdy hasn't been hitting it out of the ballpark like maybe a guy that just earned a $500 million contract should be hitting it out of the ballpark with just 12 home runs. You're a guy that pays attention to the details of hitting. I'm curious, when you watch him and you see what he's up to, what do you make of the fact that the balls aren't flying beyond the outfield wall in the way that maybe some people think they should be?
Yeah, I mean, look, beggars can't be choosers is the first thing I would say. Like, look, 10 games over 500 or 15 games over 500, whatever it is, and you know, if the team's playing well, like it really ultimately doesn't matter. And I think his ability to like really just, he's going to impact the lineup no matter how many homers he hits, right? Like the threat, the fear, the imposition of having him in the middle of your order is similar to having Jose or Eddie or Josh in the lineup, right? Like the production, it doesn't matter as much as the threat of the production, because what it's done is it's opened up a lot of opportunities for other guys, right? Like, you know, I would rather Vlad Guerrero Jr. take his walks and stay in the strike zone and make sure that he's having competitive at-bats over and over again, because he's going to get his, right, whenever it happens. And people have seen Vlad go on runs that are, non-human in a lot of ways, because he's capable of it, right? So who's to say that he won't hit 30 in the second half, right? Like we don't know. More than anything else, right? Like I used to have a pitching coach at AA that used to say homers are thrown, they're not hit. So you know, it's a combination of factors, and right, like the one thing that you want to see from a guy like him is you want him to be taking his hits to right field. Like when Vladdy's staying in the big part of the field, which is true for just about any hitter, that's when the whole field really opens up. And there are just a lot of different, you know, considerations. The signing the contract, how does it affect you? Like being in the negotiations, all that stuff. It all plays a small role in it, right? It's taking up bandwidth somewhere. So, you know, I'm not too worried about him. He's got hit in his DNA, so like he'll be just fine. And I'm rooting for the team to make a good run. I think I'm past the point now where I don't want any Blue Jays team to ever go past where we were, because, you know, I'll be jealous at that point. So,
oh, it's a good place to be. And things are going so well, we can be concerned about this. Julio Rodriguez will not be in the All-Star game. Randy Arozarena has been named to replace him, so George Springer gets stiffed again. Does that make any sense?
No, I think George is, you know, borderline Ben. You know, he should be in the considerations for MVP this year. You've just seen the impact that like a healthy George Springer, who's playing up to his capability, has on a team. And certainly, like, if you just look at the makeup of the team, really, like, what's the biggest change over the last few years? Sure, you could point to the young kids that are playing, but like having George as like a cornerstone guy, it doesn't really make sense. But then again, not a lot of things in Major League Baseball make sense. So
yeah, exactly. Well, hey, I was wondering, you've been a member of the Players Union. There's been rumblings of Rob Manfred, the commissioner, angling for a salary cap, the one sport of the four major North American sports that still doesn't have one. When you hear that, what goes through your mind?
There's just a lot of caveats, right? There's a lot of nuance to the whole thing. You know, prior to becoming a big leaguer, I didn't know most of this stuff, and then I learned it along the way. Look, I think, and I'm going to say this candidly, like for a long time, the Players Association took a position that they wanted an uncapped salary structure, right? Now, the luxury tax threshold in some capacity does that already, unless you're a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees who, you know, you're going to make infinity revenue if you want. So it's going to trickle back down to the league, right? It's too hard and too complex to talk about like on surface levels. But what I will say is that not having a cap and not capping what the best players make, right? Like the PA took a position for a long time of like, we want our top end guys to get paid the most, and that'll have a trickle up effect. Now, the league counterpunches, the owners all counterpunch by saying, okay, like you guys want to do that. And you've seen this over the last really 5-10 years in the game. Like they've promoted the younger player. So like that mid-tier free agent, right? Like is the guy that gets hurt the most, right? Because they're going, oh, we'll give Ohtani $70 million and Soto $70 million or whatever it is. And then like, we'll just replace those mid-level players with like the guys that are getting to free agency in their 6th or 7th year and probably were ticketed to make $8 to $10 million or $12 million or whatever it is. Like we'll just replace those guys with $700,000 players. So there's just a lot of nuance. People have to give on one side or the other. I certainly think as being one of those guys who is probably more in the middle, like I would really like the guy that I consider like the Stones in baseball, like the Rocks, the guy that you know what you're going to get out of him, you know, after his 6th or 7th year, who's slated to make $8 to $10 million, but they say, well, we can just replace you with a young kid. The difference is that young kid, you don't know how they're going to deal with the game emotionally. Like, right, you can look to Boston and see Christian Campbell and the up and down that he had this year, and now you've paid him a lot of money because you're trying to buy out the years of production with, you know, less money. And so I'm not against the salary cap in a lot of ways, but I think there's just got to be more consideration to it because there's more detail there. So,
Chris, appreciate your time. Thanks very much. Enjoy your weekend.
Of course, you guys too.
Thank
Talk
you.
soon. Bye-bye.
Chris Colabello, former Blue Jay. So again, and I think if you went to all the leagues and you were there for this, when the salary cap came in, much like society, squeezing the middle class.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. No, Chris makes a good point that isn't often considered because he was a rank and file player in that middle class and a veteran at a certain point. And you're right, it's something you don't consider, but needs to be considered. And I think that's one of the ways that leagues have been successful in, you know, not to use, you know, breaking unions, but certainly dividing unions, is to point out that sort of class structure and point out that, hey, this cap could good for some of you guys. Maybe more of you guys than not will benefit from this cap, even though the top end guys may not. But and so you have a bit of a class war there with the top end guys and the rank and file guys being on a different page.
Top end will always be looked after.
Yeah, but you know, in the NHL, you know, they're top. If you look at the NHL's top end salaries, Jim, they're not quite as high as the top end salaries in other sports.
No, not by quite a bit.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, we'll come back and play Mini Cherries. But trademark has been okayed, and even though O-Dog's not here, again, I'll send him a text to just make sure we're okay.
You better.
As OverDrive continues live on YouTube, TSN 4, TSN 1050.
to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Nail It In Friday continues on OverDrive. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star with you. Coming up on the top of the hour, Craig J. Button will stop by. We're going to talk some hockey. But in the meantime, we have what Cameron calls mini Jerry's, or I'm going to say Jerry's Unplugged. And O-Dog says it's okay, so we can do this. So percentages, your Jerry's percentage on Reaves playing 1,000 NHL games. He needs 88.
I'm going to give this pretty low. I'm going to go 26% for Ryan Reaves getting to 1,000. Because, I mean, let's be honest here. He's not going to be an everyday player at this point in his career.
No.
So he's going to need multiple years to piece together those 88 games. And I think it's probably going to need 3 years in all likelihood. And the idea that he's going to play towards age 40 seems like a pretty low percentage for me, even though he's in great shape and, brings a lot of nice intangibles to your locker room, is a great guy to have around. I'm not sure how long it's going to keep him in good stead in an NHL roster.
I'm going to go 55%. I just think that, obviously it's something he wants to achieve, albeit with the 1 year left in his contract, but he's in San Jose. So I got to believe he plays at least half a season, maybe more, and gets real close, and then comes back on a PTO and a real low 1 year. Although at some point in the new CBA, the minimum becomes $1 million. So maybe there's some way they could. I just think he wants it to happen, and that's probably an avenue for it to happen.
Okay.
Let's try and squeeze in one more. LeBron is traded before the end of the 2026 season. He's quoted as saying the Lakers are in a more futuristic mindset.
I'll give this a high percentage. I'm gonna say there's like a 79% chance of that happening.
I would agree. 85%. I mean,
you can go even higher.
Yeah,
right?
I would. Well, he says they're thinking about the future, and clearly, he's thinking about the now.
And he sent all kinds of cryptic tweets referring to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs are in a great spot now. Whether or not they want to trade for LeBron is the question. I'm sure he'd love to be traded to the Cavs, given the fact that the Lakers have prioritized one player as their face, and it is not LeBron, of course. It is Mr. Luka Doncic.
Coming up on the other side, Craig J. Button will join us. We'll squeeze in a couple more Jerry's. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050, TSN 4.
It's Mail It In Friday.
The plant called and said if you don't come in tomorrow, don't bother coming in Monday.
Woohoo! 4-day weekend.
This is Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
And to officially certify that it is Mail It In Friday, Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star here with you on the Mail It In Friday. Coming up very shortly, Craig J. Button. After that, we're going to play some Yes Guy, No Guy, and we can continue on with some mini Jerry's as we get going. Overdrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. So because we're going to be talking hockey, let's go with Henry Thrun. What's the percentage on Henry playing 40 games or more for the Maple Leaf hockey team this upcoming season?
It's low. It's low. I'll go. It's probably injury dependent. I'm going to go 34%.
Ooh, I was going to go like 25.
25, even less.
Yeah, but it is. You described it properly. It is injury dependent.
He'd have to be thrust into a role, probably. I mean, it's a pretty well established defensive core. The spots are spoken for, right? So,
yeah, well, it could be a wild card. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, hey, you can outplay somebody, and somebody can be slumping, and coaches want to try somebody else, and you never know.
We all remember Simon Benoit when he first showed up. Looked a little rough around the edges.
Yeah,
And look at him now.
I mean, right now you got Tanev, McCabe, Riley, Carlo, Benoit, Ekman, Larson,
Myers.
And Myers is still there as an incumbent that they kind of like.
Yeah.
So, Thrun's got his work cut out for him if he wants to be a regular.
Well, and you always need a guy who can go up and down without a waiver problem.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Okay, mini Jerry's on this one. Marner will hit 100 points in Vegas.
Ooh, okay. This is low too. I mean,
Really?
Well, let's think about it. I mean, the guy, he's 9 seasons into his career. He's had 100-point season. One. Okay, he had a 99 as well and a 97.
Yeah.
He's only cracked triple digits once. Vegas Golden Knights in their history, Jim, in a very prosperous history. You know how many 100-point players they've had?
One?
Zero. Never. You know how they've had one 90-point player in Jack Eichel. They've never had an 80-point player.
Wow, they were the original everybody participates team.
Yeah, so I think he's going to a different culture, a different way of approaching the regular season. And the idea that you're just going to rack up points, I'm sure he's going to be a productive player. But so I'll go with his former number. I know he's going to be wearing number 93 in Vegas. Let's go with 16% that he gets to 100 points.
16%.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to go 20.
All right.
We'll see. But I like how you described that. Different cast for sure. Jerry's percentage on Marner and Vegas going further than the Leafs next season.
Oh, yeah. Well,
that's mean-spirited. That's classic Jerry's right there.
That's a classic Jerry's.
Yeah.
Canada hating Jerry.
Yeah.
For sure. And you know what though? Like you look at this team, like I'm kind of torn on Vegas, Jim, because I like this team a lot. But then there's the whole elephant in the room of Alex Pietrangelo not being around.
For the whole year, maybe ever.
You talk about last week we were talking about horses in Leaf developmental camp. He is the ultimate horse. I mean, and so they got a lot of holes to patch in his absence, right? And I'm not as sold on them because of that. And I'm not saying they can't be good. Look, they're still among the top 3 favorites probably to win the West, right?
Yep.
With them and the Avalanche and the Oilers and the Stars. The Kings are right there for sure. But then again, where are the Leafs right now, right? Leafs without Marner, a lot of question marks about this team. How far can they go?
If you're not the Florida Panthers, you've got a lot of question marks.
This feels like a 50-50 shot, so I'm gonna edge it toward the Golden Knights going a little deeper.
Oh,
I'm gonna go 51%.
Okay, I'm going to go 45%. I think the Leafs could. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think they're going to find a way. The question would be, at what round do they play Florida?
Well, that is a big factor, isn't it?
That's the brick wall.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is the brick wall.
Maybe they'll find some magic without Mitch.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe the ultimate thing is, would they be any worse without him?
Well,
if you're talking about playoff runs, they really couldn't be, could they?
Well, he was. I mean, look, we've documented the lack of production in games 5, 6, and 7s through his career, 0.6 assists in 18 tries. But he is, by and large, in the playoff runs that they've had these past 9 seasons, he is their leading scorer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we had the all-time list up the other day. He's not too bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, he did provide a lot of, like, in games 1 through 4, been very, very, very productive, obviously. So, and you need to have production in 1 through 4 to get to 5, 6, and 7. So there is that. They're going to be missing him, clearly, but maybe it'll just be a different, GMs and coaches are always looking for the mystery of chemistry, right? And maybe just one piece out of the equation, more of a collective kind of feeling in the room where everybody's a little more involved than they were before because there's no longer a core 4. Maybe that'll be the thing that kind of changes it for the good or for the bad. Who knows?
It's going to go one way or the other, isn't it?
Right.
All right, joining us on the Maple Toyota Hotline is Craig J. Button. Mr. Button, how are you today?
I'm very good, Jim. How are you?
Good. Pretty happy, and just trying to. When I look at the Leaf puzzle, I know there's a couple of pieces missing, but it is what it is. Where are you on all this?
Well, I mean, I just was listening to Dave talk, and it's going to be different. There's no question. And you take out Mitch Marner from your equation. You start to try to think about how it'll all look when it's pieced together. That's the task right now that faces Brad Treliving and his management group. They knew it was going to be different. They know that they have a team that's a good, solid team, but they need to do some work. They need to add some players, and who it is, what it is. You need to be. I always say this about the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's who can go the hardest, the longest, and there's only one way you can do it, and that's if you have depth. And when we talk about the core 4, we talk about, what players have or what they haven't done. The Maple Leafs have never had depth. And if they keep going without depth, they're going to get the same results.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Craig. So, obviously, with depth, you want to have a farm system and a developmental pipeline that is feeding you players. The Leafs have not had that, but they have one guy. They have one hope this season that Easton Cowan can come into this lineup and be, maybe at the top end, he could be the top 6 forward that they've been wanting to acquire. And maybe he's the guy in-house that could become that at age 20. You've watched this guy as closely as anyone, Craig. What are the odds? What is the mini Jerry's percentage on Easton Cowan establishing himself as that kind of a player in his first go as an NHL regular?
Yeah, I think that Easton can play in the National Hockey League next year. I think that Easton can play, second line, third line. He's a really smart player. He understands how to play different situations in the game. I just think it's going to take him a little bit of time. Now, is it going to be 5 months? Is it going to be 10 months? Is it going to be 15 months? To really find his way, what we saw from him with the London Knights. And with the London Knights, we're talking about a massive difference maker. I mean, he was the guy that delivered when it counted. He was the player that rose to the occasion, that stepped up and delivered. And I've always said this about Easton Cowan. I shouldn't say I've always said this about Easton Cowan. Over the time of watching Easton Cowan, I think he has what I would call lowercase Doug Gilmour type ability. Doug Gilmour's a Hall of Famer. Doug Gilmour. But you go back and look where Doug Gilmour, I believe, was a 7th-round draft pick. It took him a little bit of time to find himself. He established himself first and foremost as a defensive player, somebody that could kill penalties and really be a good, smart defensive player. So I think Easton can come in and do that right away. But like Doug Gilmour, I think Easton's got that fire. I think he's got that burning desire. And when the challenges are significant, and you got to rise up to him. I mean, Dougie always did, and I see that type of quality. I see those types of qualities in Easton. Now, I mean, I'm not going to suggest he's going to be a 100-point guy because I don't think he will be, but I think he can bring some of that. What Brad Treliving's word, it's going to phrase, and we're going to use it a lot. DNA. If you want to have a DNA that's hard to play against, that's competitive, that's in the fight, you got to get players like that. Easton Cowan is that type of player. They need more of them, though. They need more guys like that.
Absolutely. So if you look at Easton Cowan, Michelli, and Bobby McMahon, I mean, somebody who's already there. has to sort of jump up, don't they?
I don't know, jump up. Like, we're always looking for somebody to jump up. And, sometimes the player that we look to jump up does. Sometimes it's somebody that we're not expecting. I mean, Bobby McMahon's a good example. I don't know if Bobby McMahon has to come in and do more than he's done. I mean, he's been a real nice find for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What you don't want to see is Bobby McMahon do less. You want to see Bobby McMahon come in and deliver. They have star players. We know what Austin Matthews is. We know what William Nylander is. John Tavares had 38 goals. Matthew Nyes is a really good player. It's not like they're not lacking. But what they have to do is have they get far too little from far too many when it counts. And like again, Lundell scores. You get. I'm not even going to bring in Marchand. Luosterainen produces when it counts. Like not like in the first. There were times during these playoffs when Sasha Barkov was just playing good defense. He wasn't able to provide off. Sam Reinhart because of a little bit of an injury, but they had other guys step up. Like the Leafs. Like again, you go back and look over the course of the playoffs the years. Far too many delivered far too less. So Bobby McMahon, come in, give me 18 to 22 goals. Don't give me less. I mean, Max Domi can't come in and give you what he gave you this year. And then what I'd say about Max is fits and spurts. It's no good. It's not going to help you. And Scott Laughton came over in a trade. I mean, there was a lot of excitement about Scott Laughton. Scott Laughton's got to give you more. So it's not just Austin Matthews or William Nylander. And I go back to the depth. That's where the Leafs have to become stronger, is through their depth. Now, is that through adding players? Yeah, you can add players like that, but it's also from players delivering. And that's what they need, because again, you can't go through the playoffs just counting on your top guys.
Hey, Craig, another team that's looking for some depth this offseason is the Edmonton Oilers. How did you feel about their move to acquire Ike Howard, the reigning Hobey Baker Trophy candidate from the U.S. college ranks, Michigan State University to be exact? What can Howard bring to the Oilers in the here and now?
Well, I think it's not just Howard. It's also Mangiapane, and Stan Bowman, faced with his salary cap situation, had to find a way to give his team more skill. They tried it last year with Arvidsson and Skinner, and it was a failure. So they needed to be younger. They needed to find skill in that age group. I think Stan Bowman did an outstanding job. Number one, you get a player that's 21 years old in Howard. He's a really good player. He wasn't surrounded by skill, like a lot of skill in Michigan State, and he performed at an exceptionally high level. Well, guess what? Now you got 97/29 playing with him. Howard's a really smart offensive player. He knows where to be, and he knows where to be at the right times, and he knows how to score. What he did last year, not surrounded like a lot of skill, he's going to have a real opportunity. And you got to be a smart player to play with McDavid and Draisaitl, and Howard is exactly that. Mangiapane, smart offensive player, and you put him with good, smart players, he's going to be able to score. If Howard can come in along with Mangiapane and they can get 35 to 40 goals for the $4.6 million they're going to cost the Edmonton Oilers on their salary cap, that is tremendous value. And quite frankly, I think Howard's ready to come in and play. I think he's smart enough to come in and play. We know what Mangiapane can do. I think that Stan Bowman went and found 35, 40 goals for $4.6 million, which is exactly what they needed. And I think that will help ease some of the offensive burden on McDavid, Draisaitl. I think that guys like that can take advantage of them, but it will also take some of the pressure away from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. He doesn't have to do it as much. I mean, he's a good, versatile player. I mean, maybe Nugent-Hopkins becomes a third-line center now because you have two guys who can play in your top six. You have Hyman, and now you can kind of mix it around and see what else you can do. Matty Savoy is another guy on an entry-level contract, fast and speedy, had a really good season in Bakersfield. They needed to become younger. They needed to become faster. Savoy in a trade with Buffalo, Howard in a trade with Tampa Bay Lightning, Mangiapane in a free agent signing. They got more skill, and if those three guys can come in and give them some of that offensive punch, They're going to be a much better. They're not going to be a much better team, but they're going to be a better team, and they're going to be a better balanced team.
What do you think happens with McDavid, Craig? We've been speculating for a long time here about what his next deal might look like. MJ was on his last hit before he went on summer vacation saying if he was Connor McDavid's agent, he'd be saying maybe, hey, give me a 2-year deal, $16 million per, and I want to see what you guys do to put me in a position to win my cup. Obviously, he can sign for as many as 8 years. How do you see it ending up?
Well, number one, the salary cap is going up significantly over the next number of seasons. So players don't want to leave money on the table. If McDavid signs for an 8-year deal, and it's not for, I mean, the most he can sign for, I think, is $19 million, because that's what the cap will be when he signs it, if he signs it this year. So if he signs for $19 million times 8 years, he's leaving money on the table. And I don't think that would be prudent. I don't think that would be wise. Connor McDavid wants to win. Connor McDavid, at the end of season availability, talked about, I want to win and I want to have a chance to win, and not just do it once. He wants the opportunity. So if I was looking at it and chatting with Connor McDavid, I would say, listen, you have great opportunity here. You can put management's feet to the fire. 2-year deal, and let's see what you got. Maybe he says it's a 4-year deal, and that takes a little bit of the heat. But if he only signs for 4, I would also go back and behind the scenes tell management 2 years into this contract, at the end of 2 years in this contract, you guys better have done your job, because if not, I'm gonna ask to be traded.
Greg, let's move over to player development. And I know you've talked a lot about the NCAA and Gavin McKenna signing with Penn State and the door that it opens, and maybe it's a little more gradual. I want to throw in there that new change that allows an NHL team to have one 19-year-old in the American Hockey League. How big a transition is that? Like, does it open up a big door? Like, how do you view this? How does it affect junior hockey?
Well, is that like, is there one 19-year-old that can play in the NHL now? Does that happen? I'm not aware of that.
No, this is the AHL.
No, but is that a new rule?
They're considering one 19-year-old player from each team allowed to play in the American Hockey League.
They're considering that.
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think they've been talking. I thought you had said, Jim, that was something that was passed. That's why I said I don't know.
It's in the works. I just want to know how you think it would affect junior hockey.
I think it would be stupid for that rule to be advanced. If you can't play in the NHL at 19 years old, the American Hockey League is harder to play in at 19 years old than you are to play in the NHL. It's got 3 tiers of players. It's got young players that are finding their way into pro hockey, that are trying to establish themselves, and you're playing against older players. Then you got that next group of players that are kind of moved out of that young players that are in a transition phase of their careers, trying to figure out, do I belong in this organization? Do I not? And then you have your older players. It's a hard league to play in when you're 19 years of age. I don't think it's the right thing to do if you're talking about development, Jim. But I know NHL teams love to say, oh, we can do a better job of developing by having our players play in the American Hockey League. I don't believe in it. There's players that might be able to do it, but now that's 32 players, if we look at every 19-year-old playing in the American Hockey League. And it's a hard league, and I don't think it's a league for 19-year-olds. There's the odd guy that might be able to do it and handle themselves, but I don't think it's the best thing for development.
Craig, in the circles you walk in, I know you're well connected in the junior hockey ranks in this country. How would you describe the feeling, about the state of things, given this door that's been opened with McKenna heading off to Penn State University on a ticket that is, reported to be in the $700,000 U.S. range? What are people saying, and what are people, hemming and hawing about in terms of the future of the current system?
Well, here's what I would say. Number one is Gavin McKenna is a unique case. Gavin McKenna is an outstanding player. He's dominated junior hockey, and so everybody should be careful about using Gavin McKenna as the poster player for what it is. The NCAA, with the ruling allowing CHL players to come and play in the NCAA after playing in CHL, it is something that opens doors for everybody. That is a good, significant advancement. Now, there was a lot of players. There was the Toronto Maple Leafs assistant general manager, Brandon Pridham, his son Jack, pretty good player, was playing in Penticton. And the minute that ruling happened, Jack Pridham came and played for Kitchener. Is that bad for junior hockey? Is that bad that players that were in Junior A, in the USHL and in Canada's Junior A League came and played in the CHL? No, that's good. You're getting quality players coming and playing. Now, they might leave at 19, and they might go to the NCAA. That's okay. You're going to have other players that are going to come and play in the CHL because the NCAA has so many players that are committed that aren't ready for the NCAA. They went and played in Junior A. Now they're going to come and play in the CHL, and that's good. The CHL does an outstanding job of development. The NCAA does an outstanding job of development. Now all it does is allow players to consider it at different phases. You don't have to go play Junior A at 16 or 17 when you're not ready for the NCAA. You can come and play in the CHL. And by doing that, you're going to help advance the level of talent in your leagues. Yeah, we're still in the infancy of this, and there's still a lot to be determined how it's going to shake out. Ben Kindle just signed his entry-level contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins, 11th overall. Braden Cooch just signed his entry-level contract with the Vancouver Canucks, 15th overall. So they can't go to the NCAA. And we're going to see some players like Gavin McKenna and Jackson Smith head off to the NCAA. But we also have seen players come here. Matthew Tkachuk said, I don't want to go to the NCAA. I want to play in London.
Right.
Patrick Kane said, I don't want to play in the NCAA. I want to play in London. This idea that there's going to be this mass exodus of players going in the NCAA, there was 33 18-year-olds that played in the NCAA last year. 33 out of 60 teams. And the NCAA coaches have continuously told me the same thing. A lot of these kids don't understand how hard the NCAA is. For the 20-year-olds, for a handful of 19-year-olds that want to go and they feel that that's the next step for them, okay, that's going to be an opportunity that's good for them. But for the vast majority of players playing in the CHL, they're not ready for the NCAA.
Craig, other than the Florida Panthers, who did well for you on Free Agent Frenzy Day?
You know, Jim, I'm going to be straightforward with you. I am past this idea of who did well on Free Agent Frenzy Day. Some of the teams that did really well are the teams that just sat back and kept their salary cap money. They're winners, the off-season winners, the summer winners, and everything that goes with it. I mean, it's a question. It's the same thing. Well, who won the draft? Who are the winners and losers the day after the draft? Nah. You know what? We're going to watch the season unfold, and we're going to do it. Teams are trying to identify where they were short, and they tried to add some players. And some things you might go, geez, that's interesting what they did. That's interesting what they didn't do. And I'm going to take my time with it because you don't win a damn thing in the summer.
Yes, the cup is awarded in the summer, but in June, and not after that until the following year. Craig, thanks very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.
You too. Craig Button joined us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Drive the built-in Canada, fuel-efficient, fun to drive Toyota RAV4 gas or hybrid models available. Visit mapletoyota.com. So just so that we're clear, the reports say a new provision in the CBA will allow each NHL team to place a 19-year-old CHL player in the AHL once the new CBA is etched in stone for the 26-27 season.
Yeah, it's an interesting development, and Craig is not a big fan, clearly.
I could see his point.
Yeah. But there's always, I think, the point he made about how Gavin McKenna is a very special case, not necessarily going to lead to a deluge of players going to the States, going to the NCAA for big NIL tickets that, he kind of fulfills, he checks a lot of boxes that not every player can check. I think this whole 19-year-old to the AHL is a special kind of player, a guy who maybe has played, done all he can do in the CHL. Well, look, it feels like his development would kind of be hindered by another year in the CHL. Therefore, he goes to the AHL.
Absolutely, it's not a quota you're trying to fill. Here's our one player.
No,
you don't want to do that.
But you're looking to maximize the development of every guy you've got. And I think there are guys who, through history, have fit into a category of probably has maxed out what he can do in junior, would probably be best served going to the AHL, but in the past couldn't. So he would either languish, in the press box in the NHL, which is not a good scenario, or he'd go back to junior, which is more often than not the case, and kind of be there dominating, but not really developing.
Well, like you're always going to get one or two guys that you could say they're not going to learn anymore in junior hockey, and there was really, you were either in the CHL or in the NHL, and that didn't really serve the player. But that's a small number. And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that the European players that came over on the import draft were they got into the AHL faster.
Yeah, they didn't. That rule did not apply to them. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, good.
So
that was correct.
But it's interesting. It's interesting how the developmental sands are shifting in the hockey world, and Craig is plugged in as anyone. It's great to hear his insights on how he thinks it'll shake out. Probably, there was a lot made of the McKenna move, and maybe too much made of the McKenna move by Craig's assumption.
Well, I think everybody sort of rushes to, well, what does this mean?
Right.
Can everybody? But it's a two-way street. There are people that were destined for the NCAA that would actually go to the CHL and stay and not pursue that. But this is top end. This is the full ticket plus.
Exactly. And the thing is, like the thing Craig said about the NCAA being a man's league, there are some old dudes in that league. They got 21, 22, 23-year-olds. They got 24-year-olds. Given that pandemic thing where a lot of guys got extra eligibility, and so the idea that some hotshot junior who's 18 is going to come in there and rip it up is you got to be a really special player to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to step out when we come back. We're going to play Yes Guy, No Guy. This OverDrive continues live on YouTube, TSN4, and TSN 1050.
OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Oh, and it is Mail-In Friday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star with you. Mail-In Friday is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. BP is serving fish bowls and ice cold pints in the patio all summer long. So grab your sunscreen. Let's have ourselves a great weekend. The Boston Pizza patio is calling you.
Yes guy, no guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, and all of those in YouTube land, time now for Yes Guy, No Guy. You all set?
Yes, guy.
Okay, here we go. Yes guy, no guy number one. Playoff salary cap was necessary to be introduced by the NHL. It had to happen.
I'm a yes guy on this. I think they had to do something. I think probably the peak moment where it got ridiculous was 2021 when the Lightning won. Nikita Kucherov spent the entire season on LTIR, came back, and what did he have? 32 points in 23 playoff games. And then at one of the Stanley Cup celebrations, wore a T-shirt that said $18 million over the cap.
Yeah.
It kind of flaunting the idea that the Lightning had done a very legal but also a very dubiously ethical move by exceeding the cap in the playoffs so artfully and obviously so successfully by winning the Cup. So something had to be done. Now, whether this is the thing that will actually prevent that remains to be seen, Jim, because we were talking about when you close one loophole, you open another one generally. They don't seem to have a ton of confidence that this is going to work because they've got a provision in the new CBA that says if this particular salary cap for the playoffs is not working in a couple of years, we can reopen it and tweak it if the union and the league agree that that's the case. So we'll see how it goes. It doesn't seem like it's going to completely stop these types of shenanigans, but it may limit them in a way that won't be so egregious as that Lightning teams.
Yeah, I'm going to go yes guy in that too. The evolution of CBAs is somebody finds a loophole, you close it on the next one, another one's found, you close it on the next one. That's just that's the natural evolution. That's the way it goes. And this CBA had been around for a number of years, and so it was time to move on. And playoff salary cap is the way to go. Yes guy, no guy number two. While we know this isn't going to happen, George Springer should replace Julio Rodriguez in the MLB All-Star game because of the Rodriguez injury, and we know that Rosarina is going to take his spot. That's been made official, so that's kind of a moot point. But I'm going to say no guy. I really don't get bent out of shape about. I know it's great for the player and all that stuff, but I don't get bent out of shape who's ever in the All-Star game, regardless of the sport. To me, it's all about what you do in the regular season and drive your team to the playoffs. I'm not concerned about that.
Yeah, I'm a no guy too. If I'm the Blue Jays, I kind of want George Springer to go home and rest or go to a beach somewhere for the weekend or for the week, I guess, for the few days that the festivities are going on in Atlanta. He doesn't need to be on his feet in Atlanta playing a game and going through all the dog and pony show that is attached to an all-star event like that. To me, like, this guy needs rest. He's an old man relative to most major leaguers, and he's having a great year. And a couple days of R&R would do him well.
Yeah, I mean, he's been injury prone.
Yeah,
just let him rest.
Touch wood that it's going pretty well for him this year, and a little bit of rest and recovery probably can't hurt.
Yes guy, no guy number three. The Raptors will make the playoffs this upcoming season.
I'm going to be optimistic on the Raptors. I'm gonna say that yes, guy, they will make the playoffs because the East is wide open. I mean, there's all kinds of uncertainty about who's actually good in the East. I mean, the Celtics and the Pacers both have their best players out with Achilles tears. We just saw the Cavs, who were really good in the regular season, do a face plant in the playoffs. The Knicks just botched their coaching search. They get their 11th choice in Mike Brown to coach the team that did something they hadn't done in a quarter century. I mean, there seems to be dysfunction everywhere. There's no dominance anywhere. And I like the fact that, at least we'll get to see what this team is. And I'm going to go with the optimistic side and say it can be something in that 45, 46, 47 win range, and that would get them in.
I agree. Even as their season was unraveling on our broadcast, Jonesy, Javon, Warren Ward, myself, and Josh Lewinberg, it was a consensus. This team should be a 6th seed next season, just based on the growth of the young players they have, and with Ingram now healthy and ready to go, that starting 5 the way it is, without any trades, we figure they were a 6th seed.
Hey, The key phrase there is Ingram now healthy.
Yeah.
That actually is true for the bulk of this season.
Yeah.
Then I think they're for sure there. Whether it will be true, we know the history there, and it's not always perfect.
We'll see.
We shall.
Yeah. Yes guy, no guy number 4. A decentralized draft. We're talking NHL. Will eventually be better than a centralized draft. Will eventually be better.
I'm a no guy on this. I like the way the NHL did it. I thought it was unique. It was unique to the NHL, bringing all these teams onto the draft floor.
Kind of folksy.
It was folksy. It was cool. It was a great opportunity for the media, obviously, to interview people. It was a lot of fun to be at. And I think the new one, like, look, it was their first time doing it, Jim. So I'll give them some grace in understanding that they want to iron out the kinks of the decentralized draft, and they're going to keep the decentralized draft for the foreseeable future, it seems like. But it was not a good viewing experience.
Well, that's you're talking about the TV show.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But the TV show is the draft. That's what
exactly. And the other one was a nice sort of family gathering with the hockey community. I used to love going to because you'd run into all kinds of hockey people. But I think they got trapped by trying to keep what they thought were prime elements from the way it was, and that would be the team greeting the player in the little room there, which was awkward as heck.
Well, they did it by Zoom call.
Yeah, it's just awkward. It's not good television. And then, of course, the player comes out and gets interviewed by somebody else. Just have the interview. Like, trim that back.
Here's my thing for broadcasters. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm not a broadcast executive, and I'm barely a broadcaster. But my thing is just as a viewer, no one wants to watch a televised Zoom call. Okay? No. Nobody wants to watch a televised.
Most people on Zoom calls don't want to watch it,
yes.
let alone the viewing audience.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's just awkward as heck.
Really
There's the delay.
Yeah.
We should do that here. Count to 3 when I ask you a question.
Luckily, this is not on Zoom, because the show would be even worse, and that's hard to imagine.
Yeah, well, we've all worked with delays in the past. They're not very exciting. And if you're watching it, even less exciting. So we both agree that's a no guy. Yes guy, no guy. Where are we at? Number 5. The home run derby is the best all-star skill competition, i.e. the 3-point contest, dunk competition, NHL skills competition. The home run derby is the best of all that.
I'm probably against the grain on this, but I'm a yes guy on this. I love dingers. I'll watch dingers all night, and I really enjoy the home run derby. I always have. It's a big family event around our house. We get the peanuts and the Cracker Jack, and we hunker down and
really
build a little home run derby pool and lay our bets and have some fun. And maybe we're weirdos, but I kind of enjoy it. Not that I don't enjoy. Like, I still enjoy the 3-point contest. It's a lot of fun. But now that Steph doesn't go in it, hasn't been as good, and nobody really good goes in the dunk contest. At least not very often. So it's a low bar, but I'm going to give it to the home run derby.
I'm going to say no guy. I'm an anti-all-star break gimmick guy. I just don't.
You don't like any of them?
No, I don't. I never watch them. When I watch the Homer Derby, it's like, dude, he's tired. Or if it's a Blue Jay, oh yeah, he's going to kill himself in the second half. His home run totals are going to drop off because he's fatigued. It's an uncomfortable view for me.
Okay.
But the way you mapped it out with the family thing and sort of the wagering line or the in-house pool, that works.
You're in the majority. I think I'm definitely an outlier on this because I've expressed this opinion before and been absolutely hammered for it. But you know what? It's just how I feel, and I'm sticking to it.
And same for the 3-point. It's great, and then all of a sudden, what's it worth?
Yeah.
It's like disposable entertainment.
Yeah.
As soon as it's over, it's over.
You know what? The only good thing about those things is you do get some occasional classic moments. You get a Vince Carter doing what he did 25 years ago. You get a Steph Curry doing something special. You get I really love the one where they had Steph versus Sabrina there. With the crossover between the WNBA and the NBA. Those things, I think those things have a potential to be really fun. But it's hard to sustain them year after year after year.
And time sort of erodes. Like the NHL, one of the very first ones that I think was noteworthy was the hardest shot.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was, but now nobody takes a slap shot, so what's it worth?
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's veer into that game we started the broadcast with, Mini-Max. So let's apply it to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just assuming or going with what they have now and starting the season, what's the minimum, in your opinion, they should do going forward that you'll accept?
The minimum they should do going forward is to acquire the top 6 forward the GM says he's going to acquire. I mean, I think doing what you say you're going to do is important as a hockey executive, especially in a place like Toronto. So Brad Treliving has pointed to that as a expectation, and I think every Leaf fan is waiting around to see who that guy is and who he becomes. And we all know it's not going to be easy. We all know they don't have a ton of trade pieces to deal with here, but Brad Treliving has certainly pointed to that as a need, and I think everybody agrees. You and I are sitting here agreeing that they need that. So that would be my minimum.
They do at some point. I'm going to go against the grain. My minimum is the way it is now. I would accept that just because I think that whoever that top 6 guy is shows up eventually later in the movie. What I want out of this is scrutiny on the bottom 6. I want that bottom 6 to be airtight so that when the top 6 guy shows up, it actually makes a difference. Like right now, as we've seen over the last 9 years, you had that guy and you couldn't support him.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. We just had Craig Button on, and he was, Craig made a great point about depth, right?
Yeah.
You looked at, I think every executive in this league, in my experience, when the Stanley Cup is awarded, they kind of start reverse engineering. How did they do it? How did the Panthers do what they did, right? And as much as, we all focused on the free agency and the no state tax and Bill Zito doing this miracle worker's job of keeping all 3 of his relevant, impending free agents, keeping all 3 in Florida at what would appear to be team-friendly deals. A lot of executives that you hear about were going through that roster and saying, how did they build a roster like this? It's not just about the guys at the top of it, right? It's about the depth of this roster and the contributors they got throughout the playoffs, which kind of made like the 3rd and 4th line on a lot of nights stars.
Oh, that 3rd line's a meat grinder.
3rd line was their best line on a lot of nights.
Oh, boy.
And then, we all know about the turning point of the way, Maurice deployed that 4th line and what it meant to him and to that team. So you're right. It's a big factor here for the Leafs. They didn't get enough out of those guys in the playoffs by any measure. And the question is, how do you get more, right?
Yeah. I mean, if at the end of the day, before the season starts, they've got a bona fide meat grinder 3rd line, that takes care of a lot of stuff. Because to me, that sample size, if you want to go back over all those losses to Boston, especially the early part of the run, the early part of the 9-year sample size, it was the 3rd and 4th line that got eaten alive. But except for when Kadri was there, but of course he got suspended. But I mean that was a big factor for the Bruins.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the other the storyline that to me has kind of gone underplayed is, Max Pacioretty. If they lose him, like if he's not back, I mean he was huge in that playoff run.
Yes, he was.
I mean, he had some really big moments. 8 points in 11 games. We all know about the big moments, but you start looking down the lineup like. Scott Lawton, there was a lot of made, as Craig Button was pointing out, there was a lot made of Scott Lawton coming to town.
Yep.
And what did he end up with? 0 goals, 2 assists in 13 games.
He wound up in the 4th line.
There was a lot made of Steven Lorentz re-signing. What did he have in the playoffs? 0 goals, 2 assists, 2 points. I mean, we've talked about, David Kampf obviously being expendable because he only played in 1 playoff game. But we talked about Bobby McMahon. Like, does he deserve that spot as a top 6 left winger? What was his playoff output? 0 goals, 3 assists. Bobby McMahon, a guy who prides himself on popping in a goal now and then, didn't get one in the playoffs.
He could be, if he could up that game where it's consistent, that could plug a big hole.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make. Like they're going to need. You can ask the GM to perform, a great service to the roster by adding another player, and I think that's expected. I think that should
at some
happen.
point. Yep.
But clearly they're going to need some of these guys to do more.
Yeah,
on the existing roster.
It's sort of like a cast call that we talked about this before about the top right winger and the second line left winger, but really it puts pressure on who's ever on the 3rd and 4th line to deliver. And if they continue to be inconsistent, I think you have to look at moving some of those guys out.
Without a doubt.
So what is the max for you? The Leaf max?
I mean, I guess the Leaf max would be more if you're talking about changing the DNA, and I think you get, listening to Brad Treliving, he did an interview on OverDrive on free agency day, and he's done a handful of interviews since he uttered that phrase, change the DNA.
Yeah.
I think he probably wants to walk that back a little bit because I think a lot of us interpret it as change a lot of personnel, right? Because DNA kind of implies.
But he did say like the entire organization, so that sort of dissipated some of the blame, I guess. But I don't know. Is somebody not on the ice responsible for that?
Exactly. So my thing would be, but if you're really, I think there's a lot of people who believe that, moving one, like essentially having one of the core four leave for not nothing, because you did get something back in the form of Waugh, but you need to do more. So would it be a trade of a significant piece that's been here a long time? Would it, I guess the one that gets brought up a lot would be Morgan Riley. Now Morgan Riley would have a lot to say about that because he's got a no trade clause, but
it has to be somebody of value.
He's got value.
Yeah.
He's got value. He's got a lot of life left in those legs. It would, I think if you really want the dynamic to change more, my max would be change more of the guys who've been here a long time and see if the dynamic changes.
I would agree with you. So the max is, if you want to change the DNA, it's not just one player.
Exactly.
You don't just let arguably your best player walk away or you move him out. You need to change more. So I totally agree with you. That's a good max. Coming up at the top of the hour, Mike Ferrin from MLB Network. Also, we have Ryan Dinwiddie, coach of the Argos, who have the bye week. And we'll continue on with OverDrive live on YouTube, TSN 1050 and TSN 4.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Mail it in Friday, Overdrive. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Stars. So, Summer League basketball tonight. Raptors visit or against Chicago in Vegas. TSN 4. 8 o'clock is the tip-off there. Last night, Cooper Flagg, 32 minutes, 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. And he didn't like his performance that much. Take a listen.
Not up to my standard. I'm going to regroup. I'm going to be all right. It's a new feeling, new environment, new teammates. But the guys held it down. Miles, Ryan, they were amazing tonight. Max, all of them, they were great tonight. So, they had my back. I didn't have my best game. But I'm going to just keep going forward.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, it only gets better.
I thought he looked really good. Obviously, 5 for 21 from the field was not good.
Yeah.
And his jump shot needs some work. But, man, he plays with an incredible motor. And
that's a big part of the game, isn't it?
A huge part of the game. And he's got just a doggedness to him. And I think, like, these summer league games, they're almost unwatchable. It's just a bunch of guys who likely will not be in the NBA anytime soon, in large part, kind of dribbling around, looking for their own shot, trying to make sort of name for themselves. And so the spacing isn't regular. It's not world-class spacing. It's really muddled. And so to make sense of the game in a game that doesn't make sense, like a summer league game, is not easy, and especially for a player of Flagg's caliber. I thought he did really well.
Yeah, I always looked at Summer League as gives you an indication of where the guy is, and you watch him on a night-by-night basis and see the improvement. A couple years ago when Grady Dick was debuting in the Summer League, I looked at him and went, well, he's got some work to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. You hear all the draft stuff. Oh, he's this. But you watch him and go, no, he's got some developing to do.
Well, yeah, with him, it was just physical, right? Like, the body just wasn't there. It wasn't an NBA standard body. And Flagg's got a NBA body already at age 18, which is amazing. Like, he's a strong kid. Bronny had the game on his fingertips, had the shot that could have won it, and fired up a long 3 and missed. But it didn't impress me much in that game either. It still hasn't lived down the fact that his dad got him the job.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to argue with that. So there we are with that summer league and the $2,500 or $3,000 to sit courtside. And you're like, I know the NHL has prospect tournaments in various spots, but wouldn't you like to see a league sort of prospect tournament in the NHL?
I think it'd be cool. I think you've heard rumblings that they might consider it, but haven't seen anything come of it. But yeah, the NBA's built an incredible little business out there in the Nevada desert in the summertime. And hey, the other guy that made waves last night, Ryan Nembhard, Aurora's own.
Yeah.
Andrew Nembhard's younger brother, who had a really good game for the Mavs and played off Cooper Flagg really well. And what do you have, 21 points, shot it really well. Just looks like a kind of a smaller version of Andrew, who had such a good year in Indiana.
Overdrive continues, moving over to TSN 2, still live on YouTube and TSN 1050.
Can win it, and he's within 2 bike lengths, so it's doable, and he's where he needs to be. Off the back straight is the first chance he's going to have.
All right, so here they go down the roller coaster one final time, and Shubenacading, you see Young, the handlebars wiggling all over the place as he picks up the drive, gets as close as he can. Can't make the move here though, Colin.
Into the carousel, Young's trying everything.
Takes a look up the inside. Garan, defensive line, gets back on the power. We'll go once more to the right. Up the hill to the left is Young. Makes the move on the inside. Picks up the drive towards the line, and it is too close to call. Mario Garan's dancing on top of the pits. And so it looks like Garan has come away victorious. What a finish.
And I think Ben made a fantastic move, very brave, and it worked, but I think that wheelie at the very end hurt him, and that opened the door at Garan's electronics, maybe just a little bit more effective when he needed the drive. There you can see Ben patting the front of the BMW. He's not supposed to do that anymore.
Look at the move here on the inside by Ben Young, and the heart rate absolutely through the roof as they came towards the line. Everybody watching a photo finish, and you see that front wheel just slightly off the front.
And that, my friend, is as good as it gets.
These riders must be absolutely exhausted after 22 laps around Atlantic Motorsport Park, but Sam Garan does the double and holds off Ben Young.
And if you're wondering what nothing looks like at the line, it was 0.09 of a second.
Incredible battle between these two. Great competitors, tons of respect for each other, but good, hard, clean racing. Let's hear from our winner, Sam Garan.
Excellent race, Sam. Did we change strategies from race 1 to race 2 and take both home?
Yes, this race, the strategy was just to enjoy, to have fun and no pressure, and it paid off. We were having like a relaxed race with Ben. He just went to the front for the majority of the race, and then he made a little mistake about 2 or 3 laps to go, and I just made the pass. Then it was a drag race to the line, and I won. So 2 and 2, it's amazing. Thank you to all our sponsors, EFC Group, Roulotte, United Rental, Molloy, GMR, KSA.
It's Mail It In Friday.
Yeah, hi, it's Bill Lumberg again. Yeah, it isn't a half day or anything like that.
This is OverDrive.
It's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
With Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Definitely Mailed In Friday. Jim Taddy, Dave Festuck from the Toronto Star with you. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Coming up very shortly, Mike Ferrin will stop by. MLB Network host and Ryan Dinwiddie will stop by, coach of the Argos, who have the weekend off. Tonight we have Calgary in Saskatchewan, 9 o'clock. TSN 1, 3, and 5. Tomorrow night, Ottawa and Hamilton. And on Sunday, BC and Edmonton. So only 3 games this week, which is kind of odd, but it does happen. And a week from now, the Toronto Indy will be in the streets of Toronto. They'll be off and racing. TSN 1050 giving you a chance to win VIP club access at the Ontario Honda Dealers Indy Toronto. Today's insider keyword is throttle.
I like that one.
Throttle. Starting right now, you have 10 minutes and 50 seconds to text throttle along with your name and city to 105050. Next Monday, or this Monday actually, first up will be calling one listener with a VIP package, including seats in a covered suite Located trackside in Turn 11, food and beverage, access to the IndyCar paddock to get up close with teams, cars, and drivers. And, of course, standard message rates apply. Full details at tsn1050.ca.
I love the sound of engines revving in the distance, man. It's a great weekend in Toronto when the Indy cars are in town.
And the Jays will be home, too, so go train.
Yes.
Local transit.
Or just walk.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah. So we were playing that mini-max game. Let's do it with the Raptors while we're waiting for Mike to talk about Major League Baseball. What is your minimum for the Raptors as they stand right now?
Like, my minimum might be the same as my maximum if I'm talking about what I expect them to do between now and the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Because it's precisely nothing. I mean, they've kind of tied up a lot of money in all these guys. They don't really have a lot of leeway here. And all the hope that maybe we had of Masai Ujiri pulling a big name out of his hat with a big kind of franchise-changing trade, I think that's dissipated because guess what? Masai Ujiri is not working there anymore. And it feels to me like, there's a belief that what they have now can get them where they want to go, at least for the coming season.
And maybe keep them there for a year or two. I guess my minimum is they leave it as is. But as I say that, this is kind of like the Leaf conversation. If you get through their starting five of Quickly, Ingram, Barrett, Barnes, and Pirtle, then you get to the second unit, Shed, Dick, Abaji, Murray Boyles, and Mobo, and also Jacoby Walters in there. You've got a lot of young players. And as I said to Jack the other day, some of those guys started and played big minutes, and now they're going to be asked to do finer-tuned, more specific stuff with less minutes. And they've almost got duplication of service there. I mean, they have some assets. If they wanted to do some asset management, they might be able to do that.
It's possible. They could thin out the ranks a little bit. You're right.
It's a pretty young second unit.
Yeah, and you're right. It is a young second unit. You could probably better define the roles. And let's face it, they're still short of shooting. So they got to be looking for that somehow. They're still short bigs, right? That's been a constant problem. So there's definitely things they can improve, but I'm just not sure that this is the moment for that, right?
You almost have to let it sort of go on its own course for a while. I mean, if you're going to finish sixth, that's a consensus that's as good as they could do. If you leave it alone, why wouldn't you just do that?
Do that and see where you are.
Yeah,
because I think the problem with this team, Jim, for me is just haven't seen them play together enough.
You haven't seen the starting five because Ingram hasn't played.
Yeah, and even Quickly didn't play enough, right? No, for a guy making $32.5 million for the next 4 years. There's a lot to be proven there about what he can actually bring this franchise. So, I think that this is a really important year just to kind of start to understand what this team can be under Darko Rajakovic, because it's not clear right now to me.
No. Well, there are, we talked about a big motor with Cooper Flagg. There's a lot of guys in this team that have a good motor.
Yeah,
and they're fun to watch. Even when they were starting people that nobody knew, they were still fun to watch.
That's the thing. I mean, that's if the Raptors have had one kind of non-negotiable with the way they've drafted, it's in a lot of ways it's been that sort of you got to be you got to be a competitor. You got to have a motor. And Colin Murray Boyles, defensive guy that they just drafted in the first round, falls into that category and should add to the collection.
Yeah, so sometime over the next 55 minutes, we'll return back to the Raptors story and deal with the Max. Right now, let's segue over to baseball. Mike Ferrin is here, MLB Network host. Mike, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
Very good, thanks. So with the Jays doing what they're doing and obviously fast-forwarding by just, 20 days to the trade deadline, what do you see them doing?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think they'll be active. I thought Ben Nicholson-Smith did a really nice job kind of handling this week on Sportsnet website, just a little bit of what they've done when they've been in the race over the last 5 years. So my guess is it's going to be a little bit of a couple things. I think they'll probably look for some offensive help. I think that's one of my more pressing concerns with them. I think that there are a couple of guys that might be a little bit out over their skis. And that the team, really isn't any different in terms of what their approach has been this year from where they were a year ago. And certainly there are guys that are having much better seasons, right? Vladdy's had a good year. Bo Bichette significantly better. Obviously, George Springer's been amazing. Kirk's been great to this point. But I think a little bit more offensive certainty would make some sense to me. Maybe in the outfield, adding somebody who can hit right-handed, I think, is probably somebody that fits the bill. And then I think, they're probably looking for the same thing that most every team is looking for, which is guys that can miss bats either in the rotation or the bullpen. I mean, that's the name of the game, is how do you get strikeouts? And while the pitching staff has been pretty good of late, I don't think they need to limit it just to say, hey, we need a bullpen arm or we need a starter. I think they're probably going to look at multiple arms. I would think that the idea is how can you shorten the game in the postseason, right? And offensively, how can you grind out at bats to put the most pressure on the opposing team? And so those will be the goals of what they're trying to achieve at the deadline. And as to who that means, I don't know, because we still don't know who's going to be selling and who's going to be selling what. That's the nature of 40% of the league making the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. And that really is the tricky equation to crack here between now and July 31st is who will be the buyers, who will be the sellers. And I guess, we've got a lot of time on our hands here, 20-some days until that moment. But, what's your best guess? Like, one team that keeps coming up, because the Jays obviously have ties to them and they have some interesting, intriguing assets, the Cleveland Guardians. Start there. Like, what's your best guess on Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland, they just won 4 in a row, right? They won the opener of the doubleheader against the White Sox today. They're still in the wild card mix. Cleveland's a little bit of a wild card in this because they're a team that will, and I'll steal the word that John Mozeliak, the head of operations for the Cardinals, loves to use, which is they love to arbitrage, right? So they will buy and sell at the same time. Just because they trade somebody doesn't mean they're punting a season. So they could be one of those fits. I would think that there probably is a little bit of bullpen talk. You've started to hear some rumors about Stephen Kwan. I think they're probably less likely to move him. That feels like hey, we're getting ready for another year down the line, because they're really good at having conversations with teams that they pick up further away. But, yeah, I mean, I think there's the possibility of anybody that's on an expiring contract there. And if the Jays were really willing to part with something significant that could help Cleveland in the future to make their organization better, then maybe they would be willing to talk about Emmanuel Clase. But I wouldn't hold out much hope on that, especially, listen, they're playing the White Sox right now, who are the worst team in the American League. If they sweep that series, all of a sudden they've essentially erased that 10-game losing streak.
And, of course, Mike, the Jays will not be the only aggressive shoppers, if indeed they decide to be aggressive shoppers. I mean, there's a lot of talk that the Yankees will get out there and really be looking to fill the holes they've got at third base and second base. And the Dodgers obviously always are buyers. The Tigers, having the year they're having. Like, who do you think the biggest threat is to the Blue Jays to sort of get in front of them with the shopping cart and maybe pluck the assets that they wish they could have acquired?
Yeah, so it's a good question, because the problem is that not everybody's looking for the same thing, right? So I don't know that the Jays are necessarily looking for third base help in the same way that the Yankees are. And while I think Yankee fans have their hearts set on Eugenio Suarez, I don't know that the Diamondbacks are really willing to trade him yet. They're still, 5.5 games out in the wild card mix, and they feel like they have a talented team even with the injuries that they've had. So, I think the teams that tend to be aggressive, I think Seattle will be aggressive at the deadline. They have a very deep farm system. There is some pressure on that group to be able to make the playoffs kind of in the same way that there's been pressure on the front office in Toronto. I think San Diego is always aggressive. I think based on the fact that Buster Posey made the move early the way he did for Rafael Devers, I think you would have to assume that they are going to be aggressive as well. The one thing with San Francisco, though, is that bullpen may not be their most significant need, right? They're probably looking for offense before anything else. But Milwaukee has a very good team. The Cubs are in need of – the Cubs bullpen has been great, right? I think they have the third best ERA in the sport. But they have, like, the second or third lowest strikeout rate as a group. So, again, another team that's going to be looking for bat missers. And the Phillies will always be aggressive. So, I mean, we can go down this list. And the problem is that there's just so many teams that are going to be looking for the same thing, which is strikeouts, ways to shorten the game from the back to the front in the postseason. And there's only a handful of those relievers that we think are going to be available. We don't even know if they're going to be available.
Yeah, and I guess the relevant point is the number of teams that would be selling. So if you're talking about, Baltimore, Oakland, and Chicago in the American League and in the National League, from Miami down, which is what, 5 teams. I mean, that's an 8-team market. How busy do you think this trade deadline is going to be?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen, and I wouldn't even count on Baltimore in that either because they're 6.5 games out of a wild card spot right now, right? So I know they traded Brian Baker yesterday, but I don't know that you can look at this as traditional buyers or sellers. And so I've told this story, I think, frequently in the last couple of weeks in interviews just because I think it's super relevant. I was talking to a GM about this a number of years ago about the trade deadline and what he wanted to do. And he said, if you think about it, there's really only 2 windows for us to improve our organization with external additions. It's the off season and it's that run up to the trade deadline, right? So I think if you look at it from that standpoint, there are some teams that would fit the mold of buyers and sellers at the same time. I know we talked about Cleveland like that, but, let's say Arizona were to move a player or 2. Well, they also want to win. They have 2 superstar players that are under long-term control, in Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll, and they have 2 key starting pitchers that are free agents after this year. So they may be buying as well. Cincinnati is a team that has bought and sold at the same time too. And those teams that you mentioned, like the Miamis, the Atlantas, the Washingtons, the Pittsburghs, certainly the Colorados, there may be a separate category. They don't have that many players that are super attractive to be able to acquire. And I put Colorado in a separate category because they just have never really done anything at the trade deadline. I mean, they have been, despite rumors upon rumors upon rumors for the last 5 years, they've mostly stood pat. Now, they swear that this time is going to be different, but I don't know if you guys were fans of the old Peanuts cartoons, but Lucy always swore that she was going to hold the football for Charlie Brown, too. So until the Rockies actually kick the football, I'm not sure that I'm going to buy the fact that they're in this, right? Like that they're in it to sell. So I do think that complicates matters, and it could make for, I would say a modest deadline, but I'm assuming that there are going to be a volume of trades, and a lot of them are going to involve relievers, and some of them are probably going to be names where you go, now, who was that again?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Hey, Mike, obviously we're coming up to the All-Star break here. The Home Run Derby is, a polarizing event, I would say. Some love it. Some hate it. I happen to be in the former category, but what do you have a pick? And if you don't have a pick, is it because you just don't care?
I wouldn't say that I don't care. I would say that I have a long history of being a poor predictor of things. All you have to do is look at my predictions before a season starts for baseball. I once lost an NCAA tournament pool to a quarter. The coin flip did better than I did, so I'm not very good at it. But what I would say is I think there are a couple of guys that are really exciting in it. I mean, one, Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to be jazzed to do it at home, and he certainly has some rise to the occasion, and I think Jazz Chisholm has that as well. But the 2 guys that I'm really excited to see are Junior Caminero from the Rays and O'Neal Cruz from the Pirates. And if you haven't seen O'Neal Cruz hit a baseball yet, you have to see O'Neal Cruz hit a baseball. I mean, he hits it harder than anybody else in the game. Not even Giancarlo Stanton has hit a ball as hard as Cruz has. He is really impressive. And with Caminero, it's funny, we were talking on our radio show this morning to Brandon Lau of the Rays. He said when he debuted in Toronto, he took batting practice, and the Jays fans gave him a standing ovation the first time he ever took batting practice in a major league ballpark. And I think that's because Caminero just hits the snot out of the ball constantly. So I think it's a kind of a fun field, even though there aren't a whole lot of huge names in it. But it's going to be – there are some guys that I think are going to capture the zeitgeist.
Mike, let's talk salary cap. I mean – some of us have been around for a while, so the fact that there was a salary cap that eventually got into the NBA, the NFL, here the CFL, and the NHL is startling. But when you talk salary cap for Major League Baseball, you come up with apoplectic, work stoppage. It's just, how does this even happen, and does it actually benefit the game?
So I think those are 2 great questions. And remember that none of those caps happened without significant stoppages in all of those. The NFL hired replacement players, right? That's what led to the cap. which Major League Baseball tried to do in 1995 until a U.S. Circuit Court judge stepped in and said that it was unfair labor practice. Hockey has lost, a season and a half because of that, and one full season that was shut out to get the cap the way that it is. The NBA had multiple long work stoppages. Listen, I think that it's a really nice marketing tool to say, hey, this is a great opportunity for small market fans to have faith that their teams are going to get players that they wouldn't otherwise. But I haven't seen any proof of that. And I think really what it is like the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't suddenly going to start spending on good players. It's because the ownership is going to stay the same, right? Like whatever the floor is, the floor would be so modest in such a deal like that all it would do would be artificially inflate the salaries at the back end. Furthermore, I think, and this is one of the union's talking points, and I do think it is worth mentioning, it's been 26 years since we've had a repeat champion in Major League Baseball. You now have 40% of the league that makes the postseason. And there was this great study that was done a couple of years ago, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was Ben Zomer who did it, compared baseball's playoffs to the other postseasons, right? And in the NBA, 80% of the favorites win the playoff rounds. In order for baseball to have that happen, every round would need to be a best of 75. So if the goal is to be a postseason that gives everybody a chance, baseball's in pretty good shape in that regard. And really what a cap does is it may give you this marketing idea that things are warm and fuzzy, but it's a little like eating something with a little too much MSG. You're full at first, and then all of a sudden you're really hungry again. And that's because the owners are the ones who benefit for it. There was a story about a week and a half ago that the commissioner was telling potential investors into Major League Baseball, that he had been going directly to the players for the last 3 years to say, you're leaving money on the table. And the response sounds like from the players is like, well, wait a second. Like, why, if they're coming to us with this, should we believe that it's good? And I think that that's a fair way to look at it. I mean, the biggest people that benefit from any sort of a cap is management. And I don't know that there's anything that helps to drive competitive balance by creating caps and floors salary-wise. So I'm not in favor of it. I'm certainly not in favor of losing a season over it. I think, especially at a time where baseball is starting to grow in popularity again, based on the television numbers in the U.S., based on the attendance across the game, all of these things are positive. Even an off-season work stoppage would be, I think, tragic. And furthermore, while the commissioner has continued to say that a lockout is the regular course of off-season business, I do want to point out, I mean, I'm guessing that you guys cover a little bit of hockey. What happened with the NHL and the NHLPA this year? Certainly didn't feel like it was a lockout looming, right, when they got a new CBA done more than a year before the next one expired.
The speed record was set on that. So, as you were answering that, I was thinking that the other leagues, what it's helped is the value of franchises. I don't know if that's a problem in Major League Baseball, but you said investors, the commissioner going around to investors. What does that mean?
Well, there was a meeting in Atlanta, and it was, I think, hosted by the Braves ownership. And I think there were potential investors either in the Braves or into MLB ownership groups that were there. But you're right. That's what it does drive. And that is what the commissioner and several owners have said, is that because we don't have a cap, it impacts our franchise value. Well, I don't know about you guys, but my goal isn't to make billionaires even richer, right? Like, that's not, to me, I don't care how much money you're making. I have a lot of respect for John Middleton, the owner of the Phillies, who a couple of years ago said, nobody's going to care if I made $10 million on the season. What they're going to care about is whether or not the Phillies won the World Series under my ownership. And that's the thing, is that I think we have changed into a society that values the dollars and the bottom lines when it comes to teams more than what should matter and how ownership groups should be judged, which is on wins and losses, and as they continue to cut corners, and I'll take a shot at Jay's ownership for this there, I think it's so unbelievably cheap that they don't continue to not travel their radio broadcasters, for crying out loud, to save $70,000 It's a year. It is absolutely mind-numbing that they continue to cut these corners to say that they are poor, that they don't have enough money, when clearly we're still able to put on a season every single year.
No doubt about it, Mike. No doubt about it. Now let's talk. We're at midseason here, or a little past, and MVP conversations come up a lot of years, but I'm not sure there is one this year. I mean, in the National League, Shohei Ohtani is the runaway favorite to do what he always seems to do, to be the NL MVP, and in the AL, if it's a race, it's a two-man race between Aaron Judge, who's the favorite, and Cal Raleigh out in Seattle. What are the odds that becomes more of a race and that Raleigh actually has a chance there?
Well, I mean, Raleigh's putting together one of the great seasons for a catcher of all time, but I also want to point out that Judge is the first, I think, 7-WAR player at the All-Star break since, like, Pedro in '99.
Right.
He's having another amazing year. So, listen, I think it's way too early to factor who the MVPs are. I mean, certainly we know that Ohtani and Judge are probably going to factor into it so long as they stay healthy because they're the best players in the league. But I think that could be said for just about anybody. And there's still a long way to go, right? We still have 70 games for all of these teams remaining, and that's a good it's not half the season, but it's pretty close. So I have a real tough time handing out awards or trying to handicap award season in the middle of the year. It's a much better question, I think, for the last quarter of the season as you get to the middle of August and beyond for the Cy Young and for the Rookie of the Year and for the MVP, certainly. But those are the guys that would be the front runners, I think, at this point, without a doubt. And, I think there's plenty of guys that are having outstanding seasons. And sometimes it's like, what happens if the Tigers, continue on this, miraculous run and Riley Green has an incredible second half? Is he, because of the narrative surrounding him, suddenly become one of those candidates for it, right? If, let's say, the Giants ran down the Dodgers, they're playing this weekend, and let's say, let's say Logan Webb ends up dominating the league as a pitcher so much that he's a candidate for both Cy Young and the MVP. I think we certainly have seen that happen enough that trying to gauge where things stand right now is still a little bit mushy.
Mike, enjoyed the conversation. Thanks very much.
Guys, anytime. Happy to do it. Take care.
Thank you. Mike Ferrin from MLB Network. So out of that, and we talked earlier this week about the NFLPA executive director who was involved in a side deal with an investment group looking for minority stakes in NFL teams. He talked about minority stakes in Major League Baseball teams. That's got to be a thriving business.
Big time thriving business. This is, the private capital has come to Major League Sports, right? And the idea that what an owner can do essentially is take cash out of his franchise value, right? Oh, you want a 10% piece? Give me several $1 billion and you can have it, and I will have $7 billion in cash, while also maintaining control of the franchise and allowing you to have a few perks, but and also participate in the escalation of the value of this team.
Sounds like a reverse mortgage.
That's essentially what it is.
Okay, there we go. We solved that one. Coming up next, Ryan Dinwiddie, head coach of the Toronto Argonauts. His OverDrive continues live on YouTube, TSN2, TSN 1050.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Well, it is Melon Friday. Jim Taddy and Dave Festock from the Toronto Star with you. Melon Fridays is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. BP is serving fish bowls, ice cold pints in the patio all summer long. So grab your sunscreen. Let's have ourselves a weekend. The Boston Pizza patio is calling you. It is.
I can hear it.
It is, yeah. Even with the earbuds in, I can hear it. Oh, that's Doogie. He's recorded. He's calling me.
Okay.
CFL action. So Calgary and Saskatchewan tonight, 9 o'clock. TSN 1, 3, and 5. Tomorrow night, Ottawa and Hamilton. And Sunday, BC and Edmonton. And the Argos have the week off. Ryan Dinwiddie is here, Argos head coach. Ryan, welcome. How are you?
Good. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Very good. Oh, our pleasure to have you. So I guess right off the top, what is the Chad Kelly update?
Well, we actually got him full go practice today. It was a light day. We didn't do much, but he was cleared, got his final X-ray, so he's cleared for full contact. And then now we just got to see, how it's gonna look, right? I thought if he does too much, it gets fatigued a little bit, so we're not quite there yet. But I would say maybe he dresses this week, but I'm thinking more next week.
Okay, so that's a good sign, obviously, Ryan. But it hasn't been a great beginning for you guys. When you go into a bye week with a 1-4 win-loss record, what is the point of emphasis for your team?
Yeah, so we went and did a bunch of self-scout over the week, kind of what we're good at, what we've really struggled at. So we've been pretty good in the green zone, but, first down production on offense isn't there. Too many second longs, and, and then that second medium range, we're not converting that well either. So, we got to find ways to stay on the field, obviously take care of the football offensively. Special teams, we might bring some guys in. We're looking at that. We got some guys that just, aren't very good at special teams. We need to have some guys that can do it. We're losing Jack and Brian. We need some veteran leadership over there. So looking at that. But, defensively, we looked at, every time we've scored on offense, 9 out of 10 times we've given up a score. So we're not playing complementary football. So, I preached on we got to get some turnovers. We got to take care of the football, main thing. But we got to clean up some of the penalties as well.
So, Ryan, obviously, there's no secret you guys had a lot of turnover throughout your roster, but most notably perhaps on defense. I mean, what's the grace period that fans should allow that there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be adjustments when you've got so many new guys on the defensive side of the ball? And what are you expecting in terms of improvement from the group going forward here?
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a time amount on it, right? I think, from the week one, we got to be playing good football. We always want to play good football for our fans, but obviously we want to win football games, right? Very frustrating start to the season. It's a work in progress, but at the same time, we got to find an identity on defense. Are we going to pressure more? Are we going to sit back and keep it all in front of us? How are we going to stop the run game? So we're looking at all those different things. We've had some injuries over there as well, but that's no excuse. We feel like we got enough pieces to win football games. So we got to find an identity. I think we're going to be more aggressive, maybe a little bit more nickel to cause some disruption in pass protections and getting free linebackers on the field. We have a good linebacker crew. And, offensively, we got to find ways to run the football efficiently in, that second and short and on first down, right? So, averaging right around 2.8, I think, a carry, that's not getting it done. So, I don't care who's new, who's not. We got to be doing a better job.
So you were talking complimentary football before. That was really how you would describe the Argos the last couple of years. How difficult is it to sort of recapture that or build back into that?
Yeah, I just think we got to, find some ways to scheme it up, right? We don't have a tight end. We don't have a fullback, so we're pretty much a 5-receiver team. So we got to find ways to, get completions, ball in certain guys' hands. Is it a screen? Is it just a simple hitch? We got to find that identity offensively. And, that thing is in the past, we ran the ball really well, and that set up our play actions and our down-the-field throws. And so most of them have been dropped back to Coxie. We got to find ways to, be able to push the ball down the field in our play action game if we can run the football.
So, Ryan, you guys will be facing the Alouettes when you get back to action on Thursday. Alouettes started out really hot, but they've dropped a couple. What have you seen from that team, and what challenges do they pose into Week 7?
Yeah, I think, their quarterback was, lights out when he was playing. His athleticism, to be able to play off script, which we're missing with Chad, most of the good ones in this league can. So I thought he made plays happen even if they weren't there, right? McLeod, I don't think played off. I watched all the games. They didn't have the production that they had in the weeks prior. And defensively, they give you fits, right? They do a lot of different personnel groups, but a lot of the similar structures, but just enough different that you got to spend a lot of time on pass protections and those things. So, again, we got to find a way to run the ball on them. When we beat them, we've had good success running the football.
There's been a lot of quarterback injuries in this league, Ryan. I mean, you played the position yourself. What do you make of it?
Well, I just think it's a physical game. And, quarterbacks also got to know how to protect themselves. I think, we could say what we want about Bo, but he's pretty creative and not taking hits. And, it might get him off the field from time to time. But he makes a business decision. I think some of these younger quarterbacks don't quite view it as that. They're trying to establish themselves. But there's times to be smart where you're not taking unnecessary hits. So, I think, because kind of in the last few years, you've seen the injuries across the board. And, the league goes out of the way to try to protect the quarterback. So sometimes it's football and it happens.
That East, I think if I was talking to somebody in the preseason, we were wondering, where the weak spot would be. Not that at this point there is one, but Montreal 3-2, Hamilton 2-2, you and Ottawa at 1-4. It has kind of a different look than you may have thought. Yeah, no doubt. I think, Montreal at first was like, whoa, wow, we're not even going to be able to catch them if we get hot now, similar to last year. But, we're just taking it one game at a time. Like I've been saying, the guys 1-0, that's all we can focus on. Don't look at the standings so much. Understand we're 1-4. But we got to get hot here soon. We can't just be dropping games. And it ain't getting any easier, right? We got Montreal on the road, and then we got Winnipeg back-to-back, right? So if we can get through this stretch here with some good football and at least win 2 out of 3, I think we'll be in a good spot. If we win all 3, we're in a really good spot.
Hey, Ryan, there's an interesting conversation down in the States. Dan Patrick, a great broadcaster who's on TSN radio quite a bit, was asking Davante Adams about LeBron James, and Adams said that LeBron James, obviously a Hall of Fame basketball player, one of the all-time greats, would also be, if he so chose, one of the all-time great wide receivers or tight ends in football history if he chose football. And yet I heard Charles Barkley on Dan Patrick today saying that he played one game of football, also obviously a great basketball player in his day, and he decided football just wasn't for him because they were hitting out there. What do you make of this idea that great athletes on the basketball side could be football players, or is there kind of a football toughness that maybe some of them wouldn't have?
Well, I think when you look at basketball players, you look at the guys that have been tight ends in the league. Denver just drafted a guy as well, a basketball player with not a lot of experience. They're big body guys, so they can fit in the tight end position. But you look at their basketball film, they're grinders at that, right? And a lot of times they had good careers because they did the little things, diving for balls, loose balls, stuff like that. So they show them physicality, box out players, play defense. So when you see those guys, they're obviously not good enough to make it to the NBA. That's why they kind of look into football, right? So I think those are good examples with Antonio Gates. He was kind of like that. Now LeBron, with Barkley saying that, it was a different game when Barkley was that age, right? Right. LeBron could probably last in the NFL, in the CFL at this day and age because it's not as physical on receivers going over the middle.
I mean, you were a heck of an athlete in your day. How was your basketball game?
You know what? I could play point guard. I can distribute it. I was great at passing. I could throw full court passes and all that. But I was not very good at creating, and I couldn't jump shoot. I had to be, sitting and get my feet stationary, and I can make threes. But about junior high, I was like, let's stick to football and baseball.
Hey, one key piece to your team, Wynton McManus. He's been out since, week 2. What have you seen from him, and what's the expectation for his return?
Yeah, he's been itching to get back at it. We got on the field today, did individual. He felt good, feels confident he's going to be able to play this week. And then we'll limit him, throughout the week. And then the third practice, right, we got to go full go and see where he's at. So right now I'm feeling pretty good about him playing.
And obviously there's been a lot of talk about his impact not being there. What can he bring you, and what changes when he's back at full strength?
Well, just his leadership. I think he uplifts guys around him. They feel better when he's out there. We should still win when he's not out there. He's been a great leader on the sidelines and doing those things. But, it's just something about him. He's got an aura. Everybody feeds off of it. So, obviously, smart player, a physical player, and then he always finds a way to make that play. Ball finds him, and we've been missing that.
And another positive, Andrew Chatfield Jr., he's been turning heads too, hasn't he?
He's a good player. We thought so going in. He proved that. So, we got to find ways to move him around as well, not always line him outside on certain down and distances. Give him an opportunity maybe on the guard instead of going against the tackle. We're going to look at all those things this week, find ways to get better.
Ryan, thanks for your time. All the best.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Ryan Dinwiddie, head coach of the Argos, who are off until next weekend in Montreal.
Yeah, big moment for the Argos. I mean, 1-4 is one thing, but you don't want it to slide the wrong way much further, right?
Well, and then you got back-to-back with Winnipeg.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, a win in Montreal would be huge.
Yeah, and they're vulnerable. They've lost 2 in a row, so maybe they can get them in a weak spot here. And with Chad Kelly, back looking healthier, if not quite healthy yet, maybe things will be pointing in the right direction for the Boatmen.
Well, I mean, they've found a way to get by without him before, but I think it's time he comes back.
Probably, yeah. and back to form. They need him to be most outstanding player candidate, Chad Kelly, not just another guy, right?
Yeah. Just looking around, it's something that we may have missed earlier, and I think we've pretty well covered everything. I want to go back to that minority interest in a pro sports franchise, a booming business that it now is. I don't know that anybody could have predicted the equity money would go there.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. You hear a lot of buzz about that, right? And the idea that private equity is kind of infiltrating pro sports because the valuations are so high. There's not many individuals that have the cash in hand to afford these teams. So, and if you do have one, you've got the option of selling a piece of it to free up cash, right? To do whatever else you want to do. Buy a European soccer team, or go buy a NASCAR racing team, or whatever is your passion. But yeah, we saw it a little bit here with Larry Tannenbaum selling a piece of his stake to a pension fund a couple of years back that freed up cash for him. And obviously gave him a chance to reset the valuation of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, because there will come a day where, Larry Tannenbaum is likely going to be bought out of his minority stake in Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. And heck, that deal could be in the works as we speak. Who knows?
Yeah, it's just, when you go to the Lakers' $10 billion buyout, and suddenly that everybody it's like the house in the street that gets double what anybody thought.
Yeah.
Prices go up, and that is $10 billion. I mean, I think we all thought that when the Clippers sold for $2 billion, that was outrageous.
It felt like it. It just. And the thing with the Lakers is they don't even own their own arena. That's just the team. You don't get when they sold to Jerry Buss all those years ago for whatever it was, a relative pittance in the hundreds of millions. That came with the Lakers, the LA Kings, and the fabulous Forum.
Yeah, which isn't so fabulous, by the way.
I think they renovated it. I think they still have concerts there.
I remember doing a Leafs-Kings game there, and I walked in and went, "Well, the outside's fabulous." It was like a movie set, right? You get inside and you go, "Where's the rest of it?"
Right. Yeah, it was a bit underwhelming. I was there too, in my many years ago, and it did have. Well, it was an old arena, right? It was It wasn't the vintage of Maple Leaf Gardens and Chicago Stadium, but it was they got a lot of use out of the place. Let's put it that way.
And that area, I guess, was somewhat remote, although I don't know that it could. I don't know if that's the right classification. Across the street was a racetrack, which is now the NFL home for the Chargers and who am I missing?
Exactly, the Rams.
Rams, right? Yeah.
Yeah, SoFi.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So and that's where they built the new Clippers arena, right? The Inglewood area there. So yeah, it's all the valuations are crazy. The money being paid. You see, Devin Booker getting a $70 million AAV on an NBA deal, the highest ever. I mean, for a guy who, you think about that, Devin Booker is a guy who played on a team with Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal in Phoenix. They didn't even make the playoffs. And he's a $70 million player.
Well, but it's part of, I guess, the gravy train that, the team's worth this much and it's going to generate this much. And if you don't have that guy at that figure, then the rest of it all falls apart. You can't have bargain basement players. You have to have high-end players to make it all work.
Oh, you're right. But the point being, yeah, you're right. There's guys who get the max who don't deserve the max.
Well, yeah.
And certainly don't deliver the max in terms of results on the floor.
And eventually they get moved.
Yeah, exactly. Although good luck moving that contract. I don't know. I guess everything's movable, but $70 million AAV might be tricky.
Well, this year.
Yes. Yes. Times change. You're right.
2 years down the road, not so tricky because it won't be it was the highest, SGA had the highest one for a week. And then Booker took over by $1 million per year.
Exactly. Yeah, it won't be long until, I think the Cooper Flags and the Victor Wembanyama's of the world, the guys who are just emerging as future stars, they'll be the triple-digit AAV guys, right?
Yeah. We'll continue on with more money. Best bets. That's next as OverDrive concludes on Mail It In Friday, live on YouTube, TSN 1050, TSN 2.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Final segment on a Mail-In Friday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star with you. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Cameron, you did pretty good last night.
Received a void on one of the legs, the other two cash, so a bit lesser odds, but still walking away with some money. So running it back a little bit today, another three-legger. Jays taking on the Athletics. It's full fade on Luis Severino. We're going Jays on the run line, -1.5. Their team total over 5.5, and Bo Bichette 2+ bases combined. All those together, that goes for +198, and the odds are going down, so you're going to want to lock that in as soon as possible. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. The first inning means as much as the ninth when you bet baseball on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly, 18+ and physically located in Ontario.
Well done. We were talking before we launched this thing 3 hours ago. Some of the new CBA tidbits have been leaked out, and one of them is the criteria for the emergency goaltender. It has to have played at least one NHL game, but I think no more than 80. I'm outside of the Zamboni driver, Mr. Ayers, that beat the Leafs. I don't know who that is.
Well, David Ayers has played one NHL game, so he's good to go.
Yeah,
for a second go around as an e-bug. But yeah, I guess they're just trying to limit the field, right? Of guys who have some experience, but not too much.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the benefit of that is.
I'm not sure.
Because if you played one game and you probably have been out of it for a while, I sort of had better expectations than that. I'm sure you did too.
I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I just felt like the previous system was awfully Bush League, right? That you would allow essentially bystanders to come into the game. Like you would never do that if you ran out of quarterbacks in an NFL game. They're not going to a concession worker and saying, "Oh, you played in high school?
Yeah,
throw on the pads."
Well, at one point, several years ago, the CFL had a rule where you could only dress two, and I thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes no sense for an important position, for any position. But obviously, goaltending and quarterback are kind of somewhat similar in that they're very specific, right? But it makes sense that they're trying this. I mean, I guess the idea that you're essentially allowing the team to have a guy, a full-time guy to do it, it makes sense. It essentially is going to be minor leaguers, but that's.
Or maybe
that's
it's your
fair
goaltending
enough.
coach.
Could be, I guess.
Yeah, as long as he's not too old. But yeah, could be.
Although that seems a little like the old system. If it's a guy who hasn't played in 20 years,
Yeah, nobody said the gap between games, right? Played a game in 1975.
Right. That's yeah. I'm not sure I'd be in favor of that, but I mean. The other one, Jim, no dress code anymore. Teams are not allowed. Like, Lou Lamoriello must be apoplectic.
Yeah.
He cannot enforce.
Was there a facial hair clause in there,
Didn't
too?
see that, although the whole document has not been released. So, but there's Lou's rules will no longer be in effect because the teams cannot dictate what players wear.
And there was a line there about what was, I guess, fashionably acceptable.
Fashion norms or something. It has to confer, as long as it can, essentially is in line with fashion norms. That's a very debatable clause in the contract, isn't it? Because what is a fashion norm?
Oh, okay. So we're getting out early. That's what he's telling me in my earpiece.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, there we go. So, Dave, it was fun working with you. We did 6 shows in a row, and I'm out of here for about another month. So thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Great seeing you, sir.
Absolutely. And for the rest of you, thanks for joining us, and enjoy your weekend. Have a safe and good weekend.